Alright, Patreon section for questions, unit rundowns, and lists of the week. Carl Rosenberg. He doesn't have a specific list in mind, but there is a topic he'd like to hear my assessment of, and that's Kairos Fateweaver. How strong is he in particular? How should we assess the power of his ability, Oracle of Eternity? He'd like to hear about the lore as well a little bit. Kairos Fateweaver. At the heart of the impossible fortress, there exists an endless pool known as the Well of Knowledge. As powerful as it is dangerous. The well has always been a curiosity to Tzeentch, but one even he would not dare to enter recklessly. So in the name of science, he grabbed a random Lord of Change named Kairos by the necks, and threw him in to see what would happen. Lost in the depths and thought dead for a time, Kairos miraculously managed to claw his way out, changed in powerful ways, but cursed. Kairos was given the gift of perfect knowledge of past for one head, and future for the other, but never the present. The curse was thorough. He'd forget everything that was going to happen as it was about to happen, and even what he was planning on doing. This made his schemes perfect, but in the moment, everything always went wrong. And afterward, he would know precisely and exactly how he fucked up, and what all the repercussions were and would be. This actually made it very hard to live for Kairos, because he would spend all his time concocting perfect, insane schemes, which would all inevitably unravel right before his eyes when the time came. Tzeentch found this not only amusing, but also extremely useful, and uses Kairos as his oracle to this day. In the same vein as Eidolon of the Sea, I think Lord of Change and Kairos both are overcosted in the modern game. Especially considering they, like Nagash, have a phantom 60-point additional cost in the spell portal. The lack of command ability hurts Kairos, and he can't use an artifact which makes him very fragile, and vulnerable to being, turn 1 killed by stuff like Ballista. And his spell is statistically worse than normal LOC. Although it does create a spawn inside of combat, which can be very annoying. So it seems like I've almost just listed negatives here, but why do I like him better? And no, I'm not just telling you what you want to hear because he looks sweeter and has better lore, and you gave me Patreon Chucky bucks. Now I think it's subtle, but it's powerful. You can use Oracle of Eternity to straight 6 Fold Reality on your Enlightened on disc, and that's after you see the first Fold Reality roll. You see a lot of people wave off Oracle of Eternity as the 10th Fate dice, and that's fair enough usually, but this brings to mind like a concept in Magic of the sometimes crucial difference between what something basically does and what it exactly does. Not only does this make saving his roll fairly low opportunity cost, because unlike Fate dice you get to see the result before you use the roll, but the only limit on the roll is that it can't be used on priority. Also, unlike Fate dice, this works on Spell Mortal Wound rolls, Fold Reality, on a particularly important Zengor Shaman's Boon of Mutation, where you critically needed to roll that 3 to add more models to your unit to capture something in late game, or just as part of your normal farming of 1 wound models to grow your unit of Enlightened well past the starting cap. One of the 2 endless spell unsummon dice rolls, ward saves, deadly terrain, silly stuff like getting a 6 automatically on Purple Sun against their monster, and even burning an objective. Don't tell anyone. This last one is great for getting into a 10-minute argument with your opponent in round 4 of a tournament, but it works. So he's a big monster with a bad save and can't hold an artifact, and that's risky. But the payout seems really good. It seems like high risk, high reward, and that's pretty much how you gotta play Tzeentch anyway. I like to aim for the top on this one. Miguel Cabezas, who is a narrative player, would like a Coven Throne unit rundown, maybe a list with one for narrative play. Okay. Coven Throne, huh? Okay, so Games Workshop has put me in a pretty bad spot here, as you might imagine. Coven Throne looks amazing, like great model, cool ghostly vampire theme, but let's bring up this war scroll. Okay, 260 points, 12 wounds, 4 up save, move 14, flying, alright, good movement. 10 bravery, of course. It's got a bunch of different weapon profiles, most of them are bad, but it has 12 spectral host attacks, so maybe like a D3 mortal wounds or so from their frightful touches. Scrying pool. Once per game, you can re-roll a single dice roll, ooh, of your choice for this model. Damn. The Hunger. At the end of any combat phase in which this model slew any enemy models, you can heal 1 wound. If this model slew any enemy heroes this turn, you may heal 1 additional wound. Okay, so that's bad. Command ability is Tactical Insight. Pick a friendly death unit within 12. You can reroll hit, wound, and save rolls of 1 for that unit until your next hero phase. This would be a pretty good command ability if you didn't happen to be in death, I think. just because Death's command abilities are so powerful that you have to kind of save them. You got Vampire Lords for bonus attacks, you got spend 1 command point, bring back 30 Grimghast Reapers. Like, your command abilities are so strong and you have to save them so much that even something that's pretty good like this one, you know, it's going to be tempting not to use it. But, like, the buff is good. Like, reroll hit, wound, and save rolls of 1. Like, that's good. So, okay. And magic, she's a wizard, but can only cast 1 spell. It's Beguile. Casting value of 6. If you cast it, pick an enemy unit within 12. Roll 3 dice. If the total is higher than the unit's bravery, okay, I don't like it, because I don't like any of the roll dice and look at bravery ones, but at least it's 3d6, so I suppose that's okay. Until your next hero phase, the caster cannot be selected as the target of any attacks made by the unit or spells cast by that unit. So this is a potentially powerful effect, where you just can't be targeted by something that kind of protects you against it. But I don't like having to roll to cast it and then also then having to roll some other thing to see if it works. So you have to jump through 2 hoops then, or 3 if they're unbinding. So for a narrative game, what do we do with this? What kind of a list can we build? Well, what's the theme of this creature? The Coven Throne. It's vampires with handmaidens flying on top of a whole bunch of ghosts. So we got vampires and we got ghosts. So that's our theme, I suppose. How can we use the Coven Throne in some mechanical way inside of a ghostly vampiric themed army? So what's Coven Throne got? It's got a spell lore, it's got good movement and flying, it's got an okay command ability, and a random, though potentially powerful, effect with its spell. And this is a narrative list, and I don't play a lot of narrative, but let's give it a try. I've played some narrative games and narrative battle plans, but I've never designed a list for narrative specifically, like start to finish. So tell me if I'm doing it wrong, but I went with unit choices for aesthetics of the army itself, first and foremost, and tried to keep the units mostly on theme in some way, whether it be what their race was or what they looked like or what they're doing. So Coven Throne is vampires and ghostly horses, and so I tried to choose, for the most part, units that fit one of those themes, like either a vampire or ghostly stuff or cavalry that happens to be horses. And just because it's narrative doesn't mean it has to be like really bad, but I'm definitely choosing stuff based on how good it is in like a distant third after it satisfies some requirements. So I'm not doing stuff like 30 Grimghast Reapers or Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon with Ethereal or stuff like that, but there's still some interactions and combos and synergies here so that you can play a proper game. We start with Archon the Black, because he knows all death spells within a radius around him, and the problem with Archon usually is that he's pretty fragile. And so if a unit crashes into your bubble wrap, and then Archon casts Coven Throne's spell, well then now he can't be attacked in melee, and that could be pretty strong. We've given him Fading Vigor, because it's the better of the 2 debuffs, I feel, just because of the 1d6 to charges is so strong. Given Coven Throne Vile Transference, so that really Coven Throne and Archon are going to be little buddies. They're going to have a buddy system where they move around together. She heals him with Vile Transference, or he heals himself because he casts more than one spell. And even though it's narrative and maybe a Necromancer is slightly off theme, we have a Necromancer, it's Overwhelming Dread. And I went for Vampire Lord on Nightmare to keep up with the horse theme, and we've given him Amethystine Pinions so that he can fly anyway. And Ethereal Amulet, which is kind of on the ghost theme. And if you're going to choose a Mortal Realm for a Death army, it probably has to be Shyish, right? Unless you have an advanced idea already and you didn't talk about that. So we chose our Mortal Realm more based on narrative than power. But still, a Vampire Lord with Ethereal is pretty good, even though he's not on a Zombie Dragon. For our units, I went with Chain Rasp Horde because it looks more aesthetically close to what everything else is doing beyond Skeletons. Skeletons would be better in this list, but who cares? So I went with a full 40 of Chain Rasp Horde. 2 Dire Wolves because vampires control wolves, and that seems fair here. A unit of 15 Black Knights, which are your big block of cavalry. They're on horses just like the other stuff. You can kind of paint the horses ghostly a little bit if you want to, although I would be careful about looking too much like Hexrays. So that's something to keep in mind. But it also gives you a big just hammer to throw out there. You got 15 Black Knights. You can give them double pile-in with Necromancer. You can give them +1 to attack with Vampire Lord. You can give them reroll 1s to hit, wound, and save with Coven Throne. You have different options of choose your own buffs to put on these Black Knights. And it's okay to just kamikaze them out there and have them all get killed by the opponent's army, because you can just bring them back on account of them being summonable. I also chose a Black Coach, purely for the aesthetics. We have even more ghostly horses drawn by awesome stuff, and I think Black Coach would look during deployment really like it fits in this army. It's not the worst behemoth, even though it can't choose an artifact. I would use it as somewhat of a countercharger. You sit there leveling it up and kind of shimmying it around and then countercharge something that gets in your way once it levels up a few times and gets strong. Also, it synergizes with some of your Nighthaunt troops. And this Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone probably seems a little out of place here, although the bonus to cast is nice when all of your heroes cast spells. But I just think Corpse Cart is a wonderful choice for narrative, because you can get rid of all the corpses on the cart and put of some model like from armies you played on there. So you have like a dead Fire Slayer, and a dead Free Person, and a dead Stormcast, and you can sort of start piling up these dead bodies on it. It'd be kind of charming to have something like that, and so I think it'd be fun. And of course we're at 1950, so we have an extra command point, because you really need those in Death, especially with Archon's command ability, and especially with Endless Legions bringing stuff back. But yeah, I think this is a good balance, and I've reined myself in a lot with competitiveness, where, at least during deployment, I think the whole army has a strong visual theme. It's going to look aesthetically pleasing. I've chosen things that aren't crazy powerful, but aren't terrible, you know? I'm not loading up on Hex Raids, for instance. And there's some fun modeling opportunities as well. And some cool combos in there, even if they are a little fiddly, like Archon casting Coven Throne spell to be immune to stuff. And there you go, I hope you enjoy it. It was my first attempt at a narrative list, without trying to be too strong, but also trying to not to be too weak. I don't know what the narrative metagame is like, but yeah, I hope you enjoy. Edward Lawrence plays Slaanesh, Beasts of Chaos. It looks like your Frostlord tier, so you get a poem about your army. In monstrous beauty, the depraved and contorted smile with kept secrets. Alright, hope you enjoyed. He also asks if I have time to take a peek at his list for feedback. It's a Depraved Drove Beasts of Chaos in Slaanesh list, and his goal is to Alpha Strike while leaning on triple hit 6s, generate Depravity for turn 3+ summons. He's given me a copy of the list here. He admits that 36 Enlightened is probably stronger, I agree, but he's hoping this direction of list won't see some form of nerf in the GHB. I hope not too, and I actually hope Enlightened stay. I think they're fine. They're just real good, that's all. But who knows, it's probably good to future-proof things. So let's take a look at it. He's Slaanesh, he's in a Depraved Drove, Mortal Realm Ulgu. He went for the Pretender's Host so that he can get double command traits, and it gives him Warrior Supreme, which lets him receive D3 Depravity if his general is within 3 of any enemy units at the start of his hero phase. So, potentially kind of unreliable, but it can definitely work. The 2 command traits are Strength of Godhood, which is once per combat phase in step 4 of the attack sequence. What an interesting way to write that. You can add D3 to the damage inflicted by 1 successful attack made by this general, which is kind of nice. And Monarch of Lies, which is start of the combat phase, pick 1 enemy hero within 3, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that enemy hero in that phase. He went for a Sinistrous Hand, which just seems flat out to be the best weapon choice for Keeper of Secrets. It's the one that heals you a D3. Or a D6, I think, if it's a hero. And healing your Keeper of Secrets sounds to me just like extra depravity, right? So I like it. And his spell is Song of Secrets, which lets you generate depravity from massive regiments, which is kind of cool. I think that's okay. I would need to see it on the table to see how strong it really is. Probably Progeny of Damnation is a safer choice, just because it's yet another heal. Imagine targeting 60 grots with this thing. You're going to get so much depravity. I suppose if you think you're going to play against a lot of like 1 wound models, then Song of Secrets seems better, but I just like the consistency of being able to heal her with Progeny. You have the Contorted Epitome, because of course you do. The thing's fucking amazing. It has the Sword of Japan, which is hilarious. It has 9 attacks. So this is prime Sword of Japan candidate wielder. I think it's great. And Hysterical Frenzy is also a like a Horde Breaker, do some mortal wounds spell. Sometimes a lot, depending on how many 6s you roll, which is okay. He's got 3 Doom Bulls, which I think is awesome. Obviously, Doom Bulls like aren't the strongest unit exactly, but in a Slaanesh army, to me this reads 8 wounds of 3 damage guys for 120, right? And so they're just wound-dense heroes running around trying to roll 4-ups and smacking people and giving you 7 depravity a model. It just seems really cool. And you have a great Bray Shaman, which is an okay choice for the points. It's a free drop, it's yet another hero, and it gives you +3 move to that unit of Bestigors, which is a combo. So I appreciate it. Then you have 30 Bestigors, which, you know, normally I like 10-man units of Bestigors, but specifically in Slaanesh, you want to be over that 20 model cap to get those triple hits. I fully agree with the 30-man here. And then you have a whole bunch of Gors, which I'm not, like, super in love with, exactly. Depraved Rove, of course, and Chronomatic Cogs. I think Chronomatic Cogs are almost always a mistake in any army that takes them ever, except here. Contorted Epitome gets to reroll casts, and your Bestigor get to run and charge natively on their War Scroll. So you're going to gain the maximum amount of benefit out of Chronomatic Cogs, and also it's a pretty reliable cast. So I actually like it here. So anyway, it's 1980, he gets 1 extra command point, and oh, what's the second artifact you chose? Silver Slash, which you pick one of the bear's melee weapons and add 2 to the attacks characteristic of that weapon. That's pretty cool. I feel like I want a defensive artifact on a Keeper of Secrets. Even though adding 2 to the attacks characteristic is a really good offensive buff, I still think I want something defensive on it. Well, first let me say that this list was already quite clever, and so I really just streamlined it a bit. I dropped Monarch of Lies since it's melee only, and on a 2-up you win combat anyway, and after that double command traits didn't feel so hot from Pretenders. Although your +2 attacks artifact is a very nice damage increase on those claws, I went for army-wide charge bonuses and more consistent DP farming instead. Really, since I don't play Slaanesh, you'll just have to decide if your keeper does plenty of damage already, or if you have more trouble keeping her alive. As it stands, I went a bit halfway with reroll 1s to hit and wound on the charge, as well as -1 to get hit in melee and ranged from Miasmatic Blade. If she just needs more damage, Pretenders of +2 attacks like you had is probably right. If she gets gibbed too much, then consider from what, and pick the standards like Ignax, Ethereal, etc. It was tempting to put Thermal Rider Cloak on her with the retreat and charge trait for like free D3 DP and never getting stuck in, but I'm going to respect your choice of Sword of Japan, so keeping it Olgu. I went with Progeny for healing, but if you want to farm DP with Song, I don't blame you. I kept the Chronomatic Cogs because it's a great idea. Godseeker's Host adds 1 to charge rolls for units in a Godseeker's Host army, and so now the movement you're stacking on these Bestigors is sort of silly at this point. So on these Bestigors, if you get Cogs, they move 6 plus a d6 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 2d6 plus 2, and then pile in 4. So 15 inches plus 3d6. On those run rolls, sometimes you can take a 6, sometimes you can reroll charges, and you're piling in 4. We're getting turn 1 charges with both of these guys, if all goes well, depending on terrain in the way. And the other cool bit with Godseekers is that whenever you charge, you receive D3 Depravity, and if you charge with 3 or more, you receive D6. So you get, I think, more consistent Depravity from this than Pretenders in your list. And so there you go, it's 1990, got an extra command point, you have a strong turn 1 alpha game plan if you want for it to happen. 60 Bestigors, all with, you know, triple exploding hits and everything like that. You got Doom Bulls for a high wound count, you have a Great Bray Shaman for each unit of Bestigors. Bestigors absolutely sprint across the table, and you still have Contorted Epitome and a Keeper of Secrets that's, you know, really pretty tricky. So this is the tweaked list. I hope you enjoy. Community questions. Can I put my Blood Warriors on 25 mil bases? No. You're basically asking if your unit can have another 20 attacks each combat. So I would say no. This isn't Nom, this is bowling. There are rules. But let's talk about base sizes. It's sort of like a hidden stat that's not on the War Scroll that really often makes or breaks a unit. I mean, going from 25 to 32 fully halves the number of attacks in most combats, and the inverse is true going down. This is sort of like why Namarti Thralls aren't amazing. They only have 1-inch reach, and they're on 32s, which means you can only ever get about 10 of them into combat at once. You know, their output just doesn't quite do it for how fragile they are. Like, if Witch Elves were on 32s, it would change everything, right? Would I have a problem with someone using a dice app at an event for hundreds of attacks? Of course not. That's a silly question. It saves me a huge amount of time. Watching someone roll dice is boring, especially hundreds of them. If you're rolling hundreds of attacks, often with reroll 1s or reroll all to hits or wound, like, they're just going to bell curve out when you're rolling that many. So I really don't care. And if you're concerned about someone cheating with the app, like, you can look at the screen as they do it, or maybe like have them roll a few times just to see what the outcomes tend to be like, And it's easier to cheat with dice than it is to, like, build a backdoor into a fake dice app or something. So I only see upsides in my opponent asking to use a dice app for a whole bunch of dice, really. HeyWoah, what's the best cavalry in the game? It's gotta be Gorgrunta. I laugh. But what is it really? Well, let's think about it. Just kidding, it's Morsar Guard. I mean, come on. They're cavalry that's so strong, they're full carrying their entire faction. I mean, let's put it this way. If Morsar Guard get the Skyfire treatment and go up to 200 per 3, and nothing else changes in Idna Deepkin, that army is going to actually blow. Like, it's it. That's it. Now, I think GW has improved enough at balancing that they're not going to make such a huge mistake, but, I mean, I've been disappointed before. So, after that, off the top of my head, Enlightened on Disc. If we're talking about carrying factions, like, Enlightened on Disc are carrying more than one faction on their backs. Beasts of Chaos and Tzeentch are kind of only a thing because of Enlightened on Disc. Because they're just that good. The thing that separates them, in my opinion, is that Enlightened aren't due for a points increase, but Morsar Guard are. I'm not talking predictively, I'm just talking like balance-wise. I think Enlightened are fine. They're just really good. That's it. Enlightened on Discs have the two-prong issue of they're really good, aggressively costed, and nothing else in either faction is like that great, to be honest. So its competition is low. But yeah, Enlightened on Disc probably a close second. After them, Mighty Skullcrushers are better. Black Knights are better, truly. Evocators on Dracoline are better, even though they're more expensive. Plague Drones are better. Ishlan Guard are better. Sogor Grunta, I guess, like 7th or something. Oh, Boingrot Bounders, those are better. So 8th. But what about narrowing it down to Cavalry Anvil? Because it's sort of not... Well, it's not really fair to compare Gorgrunta to Morsar Guard, because Morsar Guard are aggressive cavalry, and Gorgrunta are Anvil cavalry. So let's get rid of all the aggressive ones, like Boingrot Bounders go out, Morsar Guard go out, like etc. Even if we're talking about Cavalry Anvils, they're still worse than Black Knights, worse than Skull Crushers, worse than Ishlan Guard. Alright, here we go. 3 layers of specificity. Gorgrunta are the best cavalry anvil that is also in destruction. Got 'em. I mean, their only real competition is Mournfang, so not exactly the most competitive bracket, but there you go. Orcs is the best. HeyWoah, what do you hope for in the next GHB? Oh, don't give me hope. Let's see. For rules, I hope that they make a matched play rule that ward saves do not stack. You just take the best one you have, and they cannot be re-rolled for any reason. I hope that they come out with brand new secondaries that override the first ones they made, that aren't win more trash, like the current ones. I don't like them at all. Obviously, the standard decent allegiance abilities for every single faction that doesn't have a second ed book coming out in the next, like, 6 months. I've been consistently disappointed with the GHB allegiances. Every single book. They still haven't given Gutbusters one, and almost all of them are really bad. So, hoping this year steps up. I've been asking for this a while. I hope the Great Cities come out as full-fledged factions, which is a double whammy of giving Free Peoples and all sorts of those other Shattered factions something to do, plus world building. But I don't know, maybe GHB is not the place for that. Maybe they should just get their own book. And I hope that Grizzlegore generals have their ability changed to fight at the beginning of combat only on the charge, so that armies without ranged combat have counterplay at all, instead of just losing to that, or hoping your opponent is terrible and never fights on the objectives or something and lets you just run away from them the whole time. I don't know. But yeah, it's too good. It's too good on that guy. Points-wise, everybody's got their own opinions on that, and they're all locked in anyway, so who cares? In other news, Gotrek is back, and we just saw his model, which proves once and for all that Fire Slayers would look awesome if they just had fucking pants and fucking boots. How would you rewrite Aventis Firestrike to be a mighty caster instead of a huge disappointment? Oh man. Well, it's Rules Writer's Corner. Fun. This question spoke to me because when I read his war scroll, I too suffered a massive disappointment. Man, just every single thing you read about him is disappointing. Every single paragraph, all the way through, and he's got a lot of rules. I mean, Sarcosanct was supposed to be the wizard chamber, you know? But instead it's just the ballista and sequitors chamber, and all the wizards are bad, pretty much. What can we do to him so that he opens up new lines of play, and is interesting at all? Or maybe supports a wizard-themed Stormcast army? Well, let's look at what we got first of all. This is what he normally does. 10 wounds, 14-inch move, 3-up save, 9 bravery. Okay attacks, I guess, for a wizard. He costs 360 points, remember that. He's got Meteoric Strike. Roll a dice for each enemy unit that is within 1 inch of this model. After this model makes a charge, on a 2-up, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Boring. And bad. Righteous Indignation. Each time a wound inflicted by a melee weapon is allocated to this model, roll a dice. On a 5-up, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Boring and bad. Spirit Flasks. Okay, those are standard for Arcanums, and so they're not going to change. We can move on. Same with Cycle of the Storm, same with Prime Electrids. Comet Trail, at the end of your movement phase, you can pick 1 enemy unit that has any models that this model passed across. You can add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons used by Stormcast Eternal units that target that unit in the same turn. This isn't very good, but it is a clear attempt at synergy with stuff like Ballista, which also came out in Sarcosanct. So while I appreciate the attempt at synergy, it's just not the kind of thing that plays out in the game very nicely, the way the game is played. And then we have Thunderhead Crown in your hero phase, heal 1 wound allocated to this model, so again, boring and bad. Yeah, all of these are boring and bad. One is an attempt at synergy, but it doesn't quite work the way people tend to play the game, and it doesn't really behoove them to play it in a different way, because it's just not good enough. Magic can cast 2 spells and unbind 2 spells, that's pretty good. That's what I would consider standard for a 300-inch point wizard. He's got Pyroelectric Blast, which casts on a 6. Pick a point on the battlefield within 9 of him and draw an imaginary line, and some people take D3 mortal wounds. Super boring, super bad. And his command ability, Fiery Orator, what an awesome, flavorful name for a command ability. When you use this at the start of the combat phase, if you do, pick a friendly Hammers of Sigmar unit wholly within 12. Add 1 to wound rolls from attacks made by the... Oh, okay. So this is boring, and it's only Hammers of Sigmar, and so you're limiting yourself for what armies this guy can go in, and so I doubly don't like it. So all this stuff can go. So is he a very good wizard? No. Does he have any bonuses to cast? No. Are his spells good? No. Do any of his abilities help him with magic? No. He's just a huge disappointment for a 360-point wizard. I mean, he's got good armor, I guess. A little low on the wound side, and decent attacks for a wizard. Good movement, though. Let's soup this guy up, and let's make him interesting. Let's be daring. So this guy costs 360 points, and he is the capstone unique wizard in your elite slow Stormcast army. Well, since he's unique, and can't hold an artifact, and can't have one of Stormcast's strong command traits, we get to pack some extra value into him due to these big downsides. So Cycle of the Storm, Prime Electrids, and Spirit Flasks can't be changed since they're stock standard for all Lord Arcanum. But luckily they're all weak too, so we don't have to care too much about them for item budget. We're going to reduce his speed to 10-inch flying, so a nerf, but increase his wounds to 12. Keep his attacks the same, honestly they don't really matter that much, but they're decent for a wizard. Keeping the theme of Stormcast heroes have good armor and decent attacks for what they are, so that they can put up some sort of fight in combat later on in the game, but not like crazy. All of his other abilities and spells are trash, or worse, boring, so they're all gone and we're replacing them with Fiery Orator, which is a great name. Command ability. You can use it once per hero phase, and you have your choice of 2 speeches, Lecture or Preach. Lecture allows other friendly Stormcast wizards within 12 inches of him to reroll failed casts, and Preach lets friendly Stormcast priests reroll failed prayers. Each one lasts until your next hero phase. His lore says he has the power of Azir and Akshi, so we're changing Thunderhead Crown, which is sort of his defensive artifact, to give him a 5-up ward against mortal wounds. Not as good as Ignax's Scales, but still enough so that he's not very fragile. Comet Trail, Meteoric Strike, and Righteous Indignation will all be bundled up and thrown into the recycling bin to be replaced with Magister of Hammerhall, to kind of double down on where he's from in the world and add a little world building to it. As long as Aventis is alive and on the battlefield. Friendly Stormcast units may remain in the Celestial Realm during turns 4 and 5 without being slain. This is kind of neat. It gives you the option of keeping your guys up there without being slain, but there's a risk, you know. If he dies, they die. Now, why would you want to keep your Stormcast in the Celestial Realm for so extremely long? Well, I can think of maybe a few corner cases, but let's keep going. Also, Magister of Hammerhall has a secondary thing, which is, if Aventis attempts to cast Mystic Shield, it may not be unbound, and it affects D3 friendly units rather than just one. Although, notably, you still have to succeed at casting it. So, Magister of Hammerhall is a title because he's such a mighty wizard, and it's a title because he gets some of his power from Azir, like we said, and he's a battlefield commander. He casts and unbinds 2 spells per turn, and he gets a +1 bonus to casting and unbinding rolls for each unit you have currently deployed in the Celestial Realm, max +4. This creates, I think, an interesting dynamic, but one that has a clear cost in both points, board presence, and tempo, as well as on the later turns potentially a big risk, as if he dies they die, like we said before. He knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Azir's Call. Azir's Call casts on a 7. Target friendly Stormcast unit more than 3 inches from an enemy model, and wholly within 12 of him, is removed from the table and redeployed in the Celestial Realm. All other effects on them end, but be sure to keep track of their current wounds. And so now, he can reposition your Stormcast by putting them in the realm and then dropping them down at the end of the movement phase, but not pulling them out of combat or anything like that, and yes, he can do it to himself. So you can increase his casting numbers if you want by just keeping somebody there for that turn and dropping him down somewhere. But this generally comes with a cost, especially on turns 4 and 5 where it becomes a big risk. And yes, this also creates another risk-reward calculation you have to make for, let's say it's turn 4 or 5, and you really need him to teleport himself via the Celestial Realm to somewhere else. When he does so, he's no longer on the battlefield, and so all of the Stormcast in the Celestial Realm will die. On turn 1, this means he has generally a +4 to cast and unbind, and then after your first turn when you drop everyone down, sometimes second turn, depending on what the battle plan is, he's going to have on average +1 to cast if he succeeds at his spell and puts somebody in the sky for the hero phase, or maybe a +2 if you take a min unit of castigators to just chill there for 80 points, but then you're spending 80 points to give this guy a +1 cast and unbind. So, I think fair's fair. I think this makes Aventis Firestrike pretty interesting. Would he become an auto-include? I'm not sure. I think yes, just because he's so cool. And maybe that's a failure, because I think if you create an auto-include, you failed in some way. But it's a rough draft, so I present my rough draft, Aventis Firestrike, Magister of Hammerhall. Please enjoy. Alright, choosing an AoS Army, thoughts and corrections. Forge World isn't Finecast. It's actual resin, there's a difference. What is the difference? Finecast is shit. And resin is just, different than plastic. I think a little worse, but not too big of a deal. Free Guild crossbows shoot twice if outside 3 of enemies, not if they haven't moved. I should have checked the app. Good news, this version is basically better, so my recommendation for them is only strengthened. You can't use Fate Dice to fold reality, even though it happened to me in a game that was from Kairos and not the Fate Dice. I essentially left out Slaves to Darkness and Everchosen, tossing them wholesale into Tier 4, but this was probably a mistake. Although they are unequivocally the worst army in the game, and it's not even close, they are definitely getting a book, so I should have given them a focus proper with that warning at the beginning. And there's plenty of Archaon lore to write about in fun ways. The dude is basically bored Conan on the throne wearing a heavyweight champion of the Mortal Realms belt. Big Stabbas come in the Savage Orc Moorboys unit box. You just have to cannibalize 2 orc models inside to do it. And that's officially what you are supposed to do, with bits included. I didn't think they were for sale because they don't have an actual box on the website. You have to click on the Orc Moorboys and then click onto their alternative thing and then see them there. It's kind of hidden. Also, every other post about Bone Splitters is a question about how to kit bash them, so I just thought that they weren't for sale, my mistake. Daemon is pronounced demon despite being spelled wrong, so lump them in with artifacts, elves, aurochs, and aluminium. Ah, the plight of reading constantly alone from an early age, and not really talking out loud to other humans for a decade. Next, you guys are going to tell me it's wrong to say pterodactyl, where's dwarves, Socrates, and knife. The intro section is bloated, and I'll be paring it down for watchability in the future. Some have mentioned that some specific details of my lore sections are technically incorrect or wildly exaggerated. I mean, yeah, that's fun. I called that section propaganda for a reason, but I intend for you to consider it flowery artistic license, drunk history of the mortal realms, and not an exercise in accuracy. I should note that battle tomes contain vague lore as it is, often having several conflicting explanations for events and origins, so I think I'm pretty safe. But if you want better lore, go watch 2+ Tough. It's an intro video, what do you want? Also, the Scaventide section might have been a tad cringe, but it was fun to write, so fuck you. This is the only place where I get to write shamelessly pretentious massive run-on sentences, and I plan on keeping it that way. I'm moving the warning no book and expect a book soon talk to the end of a particular faction section rather than the beginning, as that kind of takes the wind out of an army's sails and sours the perspective if you put it at the beginning. Look, I'm fighting against my nature to make a positive video, and one I took great pains not to swear in as well, so I think the overall positive feel could go up in the video. I can cool it a bit on the trap talk as well, as sometimes my criteria crept towards the non-ideal side of the spectrum rather than the you are literally wasting your points side. In V3 I plan on saving such portions for only truly garbage war scrolls like Tempestors, Cygor, or Sloppity Bilepiper, and stuff that many people play but are actually a trick due to math or a misunderstanding of interactions like Knight Venator or Melusai Bloodstalkers. Also, the tiers were an experiment, and even though I carefully explained that they were simplified and how I intended on them being used, find out what your friends play and pick a faction at a similar power level so you can have proper games, I've seen so many people online instantly take it to mean if you aren't in tier 1+ you are dog shit, which first of all isn't true, and second of all my tiers took into account the popularity and representation of armies instead of only pure power, so they aren't even getting the source right with their sweeping nonsense, but you can't control how people will take things. It wasn't a totally unforeseen reaction, but a bit of a sad one. Many people with clear heads took it for what it was, but a lot didn't, and I have to keep in mind now that like 50,000 people have watched these 2 videos, and this kind of effect is going to shape a real amount of the community as they enter it. Another reason I thought I'd try was the GHB19 will come out in a month, and I can probably sit on V3 vid for much of the year, so risky tests to get out of the way should go in the one that will last for a month and a half at most. Have no fear, I'll put tier bait bullshit in my regular shows, including this one, from time to time, because, you know, we can't help ourselves, but there's a fun conversation to be had there. But in a video for new players, I'm doing no favors talking about tournament tiers. We're going more general. Entire tier section will be removed, and S-tier armies and trash-tier armies are just getting a little warning in their pros and cons section about how you might not be fun to play against, and that there's a danger you'll get nerfed, or trash tier will get a similar warning that you might find winning games Sisyphean. Both will be cons. Also, I'm beefing up the fun lore section to pump up the average army description standard to Gloomspite, FEC, Fyreslayers, and Skaven levels. Some of them feel a little lacking. Besides just talking about their battle traits, maybe I'll mention a little more about their strats, like aggressive melee or combo control or something like that. And feature more standout units, putting a little bit more lore into the standout units section as well, I think could be good. Anyway, that's that. I hope everyone found choosing an AoS Army V2 very helpful, and V3 will be, I feel, just a straight improvement on the original 2. But hoo boy, is that going to be a lot of work. So let's talk tiers. Sitting at a healthy mix of stats and opinion. Pure stats don't work so well for a few reasons. First, those exist, and have for a while on Honest Wargamer compiled by LLV. If a tier list should just be the stats, then why bother making one? Just look at the data. It's right there. However, first of all, you need to decide what's useful and what's not, or what's more or less so. How important is it to include data from 2017 for a tier list in 2019? Probably not at all, right? So that's easy, we have a temporal property here. But when do you take it from? From 2nd edition release? From Nurgle release, a little before that, since it was widely considered the first battle tome written for 2nd edition in mind? Also probably not, as that was a meta without Flesh Eater, Skaven, New Khorne, etc. So we probably need to make it more recent. How recent we go is a matter of opinion, and the more recent you try to get, the less reliable the stats become. because you're taking a smaller and smaller sample size. So if you just take it, say, from the most recent book that came out, you probably don't have enough stats to make a reasonable choice. That's why you need a healthy dose of opinion, or interpretation, I guess, if you want to make it sound better, and I do. Beyond a time thing, we should consider what's more important among a few good candidates for what good results means. Does that mean first place? No, because first place is often decided by soft scores. Sometimes, famously, first place goes 4-1 and second place goes 5-0. And so first place seems terribly irrelevant for a metric. Does that mean top 3, maybe top 10? If top 10, then why 10 exactly? Is there a special reason why it's 10 and not 8? And if it is 10, why is it 10 for a 30-man tournament and a 200-man tournament? So maybe we go top 10%. Still a bit flawed and arbitrary. What about pure win percentage? Oh, that seems better. Possibly more pure, right? If only a handful of people have played a faction and done very well, the numbers just aren't significantly high enough to be confident. You know, I'm thinking about Phoenix Temple or Luke Stone here, where, I mean, their win percentage is very high, but only about 5 people have ever played them. And the fewer data points you have, the higher percent chance that those data points are just someone getting lucky or being in a good situation or hasn't played against a lot of different factions or whatever would have you. Similarly, if a massive amount of people play a faction, inevitably their results tend to suffer, as there's more weak players than strong ones just in the population at large. Furthermore, and maybe not immediately obviously, tournament structure and how rounds tend to proceed and are paired plays a large part in win percentage as well. Before Flesh Eater and Skaven came out, a statistically significant percentage of Daughters of Cain's losses were mirror matches, because they would inevitably be paired up in later rounds since they tended to beat everyone else. Should a faction be punished for losses to itself? Probably not. Also, beyond just interpreting the data, where and how much should opinion factor in? Does X or Y faction have secret gas that no one is taking advantage of? In other words, if I'm making tiers, and I think Darkling Covens are great, and everyone in the whole world is doing it wrong, should I put them in C? I don't even play the army, and the stats are very clear how DC perform. What gives me the right to say, nah, here we are, you guys all suck, everyone in the whole world is stupid except me? Or is that just like a pet idea someone has who happens to be making the tiers, and on paper it seems good, so they just bump it up? I mean, this is a part of the reason why people don't like a lot of opinion in their tiers. They want stats, because you can't do stuff like that. But some interpretation and opinions are good, just as some data is not useful. What about we take it one more step towards reasonable? The meta is shifting towards shooting being good again. So do we move KO and free people up a tier due to their potential? That seems fairer, but it is still just a prediction. And that brings me to where data and tiers diverge, and that's prediction. A tier list is a fast first step in picking an army for a tournament happening like this month. As such, it is necessarily trying to predict what's good right now, or in the very near future. Not in a 1K before FEC came out, and not in a pickup game at your local store against some guy. Also, the more you know about your expected meta, the less a tier list has anything helpful to say to you. And this can come from the pack. If you look at the pack for your local event, and there's no total commitment, and no 6 objective battle plans, Stormcast seems way better than it sits on the tier list. But also, this is where the fun begins, and the thing I was probably the best at when I was a Magic grinder. Predicting the meta. Now, predicting the meta is way different in Magic than AoS. So, even just talking about acquisition, you can buy an entire Magic deck today and it'll arrive Friday. Not so with Age of Sigmar, and the differences only escalate from there. But predicting the meta is still a dance of reactions and people trying to next level each other. It's really quite beautiful. Let me tell you a story. Let's paint a picture here. So you look at the tiers and results and say, I'll play Flesh Eater Courts because it's the best and it's easy to play. Alright, fine choice. You play the best, you'll probably win. So many, in fact, that a clever competitor might see a lot of people doing that and then choose Slaanesh. Ha! Now I'll beat all the people on the default choice and I'll win. Next leveled. You know, I'm not saying that Slaanesh is like an amazing counter to Flesh Eater Courts necessarily, it's just an example, but an even more clever competitor might say, I won't play FEC because everyone's going to play them. And I won't play Slaanesh because that's the obvious counter. And if everyone's going to play FEC, then everyone else is going to try to counter FEC. And I'm going to steer clear of all that, because I'm cleverer than both of them, and I'll play Skaven, we'll say, and beat both of them. And then I'll win. I just have to play a little better to do so. Next leveled. Then someone else sees all the chatter, they read the writing on the wall, and they say, these Skaven lists are taking Warp Lightning Cannons to one-shot Terrorgeists, and leaving their Ren 2 Jezzails on the shelf. So I'll bring Nagash, who laughs at mortal wounds, and he can still Hand of Dust a Ghoul King off the table. So I just have to dodge like really well-played Slaanesh, and we're good. Plus LON beats all the bad armies anyway by just grinding them out, and people think LON is on the decline, so I'm the cleverest of them all, and I'll win. And so you can see the different layers of people trying to outgun each other and out-trick each other with matchups and meta prediction. Then at the event, Nagash loses to Skaven round 1, who brought 12 Jezzails just because he thinks they look cool. All the Slaanesh and Skaven take losses in mirror matches in round 4, and FEC wins the event piloted by a guy who read the book for the first time a week ago. And this is called balance. Isn't the meta great? For those of you who don't care about opinions at all, and also don't care about what we hope changes in the GHB coming up for all these armies, here's a simple and clean, just the facts ma'am tier list, compiled by JP Gaines using the standard win rate stats. Now this is only win rate stats, and it goes back kind of far, so not exactly the best representation, but if you want pure data, it's pure data. Putting it into 4 tiers, A tier is within 1 standard deviation of the best army, B tier is above average, C tier is below average, and D tier is within 1 standard deviation of the worst army. There you go, I saved you 2 hours of your life. If you do care about opinions, hot takes, and what we hope for in the GHB, then I hope you got your paintbrush in your hand, because we're going to be here for a while. Between 2017 and 2018, there was a period there where I did some tiers, and it didn't even have S tier in it. Because it's an unnecessary tier. Like, the tier only exists when something is wrong with the game. Because S tier means broken. It means something is actually wrong with what's happening up here, and it needs to be changed for the betterment of all. The last time we had an S tier, it was like Vanguard Wing and stuff like that. You know, things that were just problematically strong. Like, the only time S tier exists is when something is about to get nerfed. Just because you're the best doesn't mean you need to get nerfed. It actually depends.
You're allowed to be good or even great. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, and just like because you organize a list of something has to be on the top and it has to be on the bottom. It could be, like, let's say everybody's DPS in an MMO, and you have 8 DPS classes, and there's a person who does the most DPS and a class who does the least DPS, but there's only like a 1% difference between all 8, and I don't mean each time, I mean in total. Like,
yeah,
the most damaging is like 0.2 better than the next, which is like 0.2 better than the next, and so on. And so, like, the last place DPS is not even 2% worse. And so that, like, does the first place need to get nerfed then? Probably not, because all of them are close enough that it's fine. So just because you're the best army right now doesn't necessarily mean you need to get nerfed or anything. Especially if the balance is good. Like, having a 70% win rate is probably not okay just in a vacuum. Like, that's a good indication that something's wrong. But that's my take on it anyway. And that's when I originally introduced my tiers a long time ago, and I think Vince talked about them on Warhammer Weekly, where he's like, I hate tiers, but what he's done is he added a skew tier where it's like, this stuff needs to get nerfed, and then the stuff under it is like really good, but it's fine. So S tier is broken, AA tier is the best. And that's why I called AA tier the best, to like let people know that.
Well, that's where you want to live. That's the
these are the armies that are the best at Age of Sigmar while still playing the game in a normal way. And then A is competitive.
You can hit top 10 with A.
All of these have gotten, I think, first place once or twice. Or if not first place, then like went undefeated or have a few standout hits here and there. B is viable, and I called it viable, and I made it yellow. Because a few of these guys also go undefeated every once in a while. Nurgle, I think, has the most out of all of them. Stormcast sneaks in the top 3 every now and again. Khorne has as well.
This is the time for Nurgle, though. They're resilient to shooting. Their natural predators have disappeared.
Yeah. So even if you're choosing a B tier army, which sounds bad, that's why I've contextualized it with these titles. Like, you can definitely win a tournament with Khorne, Nurgle, SC, Silver, Nighthaunt. It's organized left to right, so those are the worst out of them, right? But I think Sylv is arguable, actually. And Nighthaunt is a special case because nobody is playing it, really. And he's, like, a seriously competitive player is just going to choose something else instead.
Unless they have a point of trying to make Nighthaunt work.
Yeah,
like if they're just out to prove that you can make.
They're out to
work.
prove that like Nighthaunt has gas in the engine. It's just kind of random gas. That's all. And then C is flawed. Some of these armies can be good, but it's a can. And on down the line, I suppose we'll talk about all the armies, but this is just an overview for the names of stuff. All of these armies have some flaw in some way. They're flawed. It's not that the ones above them don't have flaws. It's just these are big. Some of these, Phoenix Temple, I've put lower than other people. I'll talk about them later. Anyway, D is hospitalized because I didn't want to say bad when I released this on Twitter. But these armies are bad. They often can only do one thing, and that one thing they do is worse than like the secondary thing some other army does. I put Beastclaw in D because it beats all the F armies, at least. So maybe I'll throw them a bone and consider them D, just so people don't think that I'm saying, oh, my faction is so bad, right? If you're a good player and you get lucky, you can go 3-2. And F is comatose. Like, they're just... all 3 of these armies specifically needed a book when Age of Sigmar began, and then they didn't get one, and now there's a 2nd edition, and they even more really need one, and they still don't have one. But so those are... And I said comatose instead of trash. But on my show, we don't pull punches, so D is bad and F is trash.
Yeah, the garbage tier.
Yeah, and remember these are organized from left to right as well.
So like D is like shelf tier, your pet army.
D is shelf tier and F is sell tier.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. All these are like actually who knows about Wanderers. I don't know. But at least Dispossessed and STD, you can expect a book, so it's not sell tier. You should. It's just like a shelf that isn't in your room, you know? It's like in the garage or something, and then you can... And I did some switching from my other one, just for opinions. And in which case, FEC is front row center. It's the most powerful.
I think Skaven's actually the better book.
I think Skaven is a better choice.
Better army.
Yeah. Skaven can do more things, and react to more things, and deal with more things. But at the end of the day, FEC is fucking dominating, and Skaven isn't. Because you actually have to play the game to do well with Skaven. Like, your stuff is crazy powerful, and you can play bad and win and stuff, but you're able to make mistakes and lose, and you're kind of not with Flesh Eater. It puts most of the ball in your opponent's court to deal with you, and the things you're doing are just crazy. Like, the statistics since their book came out are just overwhelming, and I can't stop making excuses for it. It's dominating. And on paper, Skaven should beat it. But, you know, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Bring Flesh Eater and you kind of automatically beat most armies, to be honest. And it's up to your opponent to outplay you. And outplaying people is hard in a game where everything is tied to randomness, so sometimes you just win anyway. Beginning of combat activations... No matter what, like if it's your turn, if it's opponent's turn, if you got charged, if you charge, you fight first, sometimes twice. People say they have a weakness technically, and it's weakness to shooting, but I think that's wrong. They're not weak to shooting. Like, it's the only thing you can do.
Right.
I don't think it's right to call it weak to shooting. It's not their kryptonite. It's just the only way to deal with them, otherwise you'll lose. And S-tier armies pretty much don't have weaknesses for the most part.
Not real ones.
Not real ones, and that's why they're there. Or they're so strong that their weaknesses don't matter. Or they have built-in answers to weaknesses they should have, right? Like, you're elite with FEC. Well, that's fine. You'll summon another half of an army, you know, for free at the beginning of the game, so you're not elite. Oh, cool.
You have none of the drawbacks of being elite.
Right. And their movement is good and they contest points well. And they have really strong spells. And all of their monsters are better than everyone else's monsters while also giving you free entire units. Each one you buy. Like if you actually look at Alariel and a Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon, they both summon, like, the Ghoul King's better and he costs 200 points less.
Well, so he's got an insane combat profile in Alariel.
Yeah, and she just kind of hits on 4s. Without a lot of attacks.
Do you remember when everyone was like really mad that like Thunder Tusks did just 6 mortals?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You know, a Frostlord on Stonehorn costs about as much as a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist. And the Ghoul King summons Yetis. And flies. And fights first twice. And has a command ability that isn't net worse than the normal reroll charge one. But I digress. Alright, and they also have a Death Screech that can do a bunch of mortal wounds.
Yeah, they've got a built-in like
that's ranged.
Board Sweeper or
yeah,
Horde Killer, which is nice.
Not bad. But yeah, so that's why they're first.
Any original FEC player, I want you to know you're in a bubble here. When I shit on Flesh Eater Courts, you're in the protective bubble that shall remain unbeshat. Like unbeshadowed.
If you played Flesh Eater before the book came out, you're immune to my criticism. I'll have you know. Unless you're a playtester, then, you know, honestly, fuck you. Because you knew, and you didn't say anything because you wanted to shit on people when the book came out. And you wanted to play them from day one, that you had been painting your army for 3 months when nobody even knew it was out. And then you wanted to shit on people in tournaments, so shame on you, actually. Unless you told GW and they just didn't listen, in which case, shame on GW. But shame goes somewhere here. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just sticking with the protective bubble for now.
Some of this is potential, right? And I think Skaven has the potential of being all the way to the left on this tier. But it hasn't quite happened yet.
I think people are figuring it out. I think Skaven are pretty dang good. The problem is despite they have their really sweet teleport tricks, but
yeah, they're limited, but they are teleport tricks.
But they're like it's limited, and I don't know.
Like you can zone them out, you know where they're gonna be.
Somewhat, yeah.
But they still have them. They have the best ranged in a metagame right now, where ranged is really important because there's no other way to deal with the gentleman on their left. And they have some of the best hordes. And everybody's battle shock immune in a few different ways, and those ways are like too cheap.
And Plague Monks are freaky.
Plague Monks do crazy damage and cost too few points. The Bell is undercosted. The invulnerable battle shock immune double wizard man is undercosted. Grey Seer is undercosted. Warp Lightning Vortex shouldn't be match play usable. That's the only way to fix it. You got to change its war scroll or ban it, because points won't fix it. There isn't a point cost for endless spells that you can reasonably put this thing that makes sense.
I think if you put it up to 200, you push it into basically unplayable.
Right, but that's, they won't do it, right? They move in 20s with endless spells, sometimes 10s. GHB comes out, Warp Lightning Vortex is going to be 120, and not a single fuck is going to be given by any Skaven player ever. So yeah, they just kind of have the best of every type of thing you could have, except a big flying combat monster with an artifact. That's what they don't have, and that's an important thing.
Corruptor with a Sword of Japan is pretty close.
Yeah, but he don't fly.
He gets teleported. He gets
True.
flying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not really. Like, you really do want to fly, even without. Like, that's where...
I guess, because then you're forced to crash into the screen.
Yeah, and you don't want to waste an artifact on lowering yourself like M. Bison at the end of Street Fighter, the animated movie, where he's like, I'll fight you on your own. Why Why bother fighting you on your own level? Just do 12 mortal wounds with some warp lightning cannons. Those things are Swords of Judgment guns that shoot Swords of Judgments at people. Yeah. So yeah, I think Skaven's potential is higher, but at the moment, they're just not putting up the numbers to really be considered the most broken shit ever.
Right.
Probably because sometimes Warp Lightning Vortex doesn't cast, and then you have to actually play a normal game. And we have Daughters of Cain, which are still amazing. I put them in 1S for my Choose Your Army video, because I was simplifying things for newcomers. Their problem is they're a mixture of two things that shouldn't have been mixed.
Class Cannonade.
Yeah, you don't take the highest damage ever and mix it with super tanky, and then also have it be really cheap. And that's what you did. So you have super high damage, and better than Nurgle durability, and run and charge naturally, and be on 25 mils so everyone always gets into combat, and have buffs, and be immune to battle shock, like, just everything. Also, people have finally started playing Marathi more, and realized that she's not there to do damage, she's there to automatically win battle plans.
Yeah.
Oh, Duality of Death? Got him. She will win you that game. Like, you don't have to worry. This is why Stormcast is on B. Because if Total Commitment is in the rules pack for your tournament, your ceiling has become 4-1 now, because you're losing that. Doc is the inverse.
CEOs love to run Total Commitment.
They love to do that.
They seem to think that it really makes you think tactically and bring balanced lists and yada
yada. Yeah, and they're like, and it punishes people that are using unfair armies. Well, let's think about that. Actually, no, it doesn't. It only hurts middle-of-the-road armies.
Right. Well, like eels, for instance. You think that it punishes eels, you're a fool.
Doesn't matter.
They actually just line up and just run across the board anyway.
That means I just start with all my eels on the battlefield, and I put the boats in more annoying locations for you. So IDK isn't greatly harmed by Total Commitment. Nobody else in S tier gives a shit about that. Same with AA. BOC can't ambush their guys in, so they just start on the board with them, but that's fine.
Yeah, they wanted to run up the middle anyway.
And they can ambush in when they're summoned, so, alright. Yep. No harm, no foul.
Yep, they still get to use their...
And now we go down to the viable tier. Stormcast, alright, they just auto-lose. Night Haunt, lose. It's only hurting people that are like 3 tiers below problematic.
Night Haunt have the teleporty trick after game, or after setup.
They do, yeah. And Stormcast have a teleport or two that they paid 100 points for. But they probably lose to people, both of them, during that.
The main trick is to actually be able to hide their...
Yeah. I mean, I was playing Beastclaw and I beat Night Haunt on Total Commitment. Translator's note, it wasn't Total Commitment, but my opponent chose not to deep strike anything, and so he lost. So it wasn't technically Total Commitment, but he played like it was, and it was to illustrate a point.
He took a paddling.
He took a paddling. Yeah. But yeah, so I like the idea of Total Commitment, where they're like, oh, we're gonna make you fight fair, but it only hurts people that aren't very good. It's not that they're not very good. Like, Tier B is totally viable. You can get top 3. You can go undefeated if the tournament pack lets you, but if you wanted a Total Commitment that would, like, actually stop people who are a problem, you would do stuff like, you know...
Not make them a problem in the first place?
No ward saves may be taken, period, during the entire game, of any sort.
There you go.
There you go. Daughters of Cain can be killed now. Immortal Skaven Man, FEC somewhat dodges that, but they do have a spell to give them a 5-up that they try to cast every time, so...
I just wish you got the better save. Like, I just wish they'd make that a core rule.
Yeah, I talk about that in my... Somebody asked in one of the, like, community questions I did in the video, what do you wish would happen in the GHB? And I'm like, a matched play rule that says ward saves don't stack, you just take the best one, and they may not be re-rolled for any reason. So yeah, those are the 3. A lot of people online have said that Slaanesh should be S as well. I think it's too early, and so I put him at the very tip-top of AA, but what do you think?
So, I actually, I did listen to the Ian and Richie podcast a little bit.
Oh, you like those two, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was listening to theirs, and I liked what they said about, like, you can look at something and be like, this is good without needing the results.
They don't have the daughter's ridiculous resiliency, but they do have the best summoning in the game, which is like resiliency. As a LON player, you know it.
Yeah,
like,
no,
skeletons are not resilient, but bringing them back to life kind of makes them resilient.
Yeah. Okay, so they do infinite damage. You know,
Fine. Lots of people do infinite damage.
A lot of things do infinite
Iron
damage.
Jaws do infinite damage once during one combat.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? No.
Like, important enough things don't fly. Their activation wars power is pretty good, but it's like an equalizer against the already S-tier army type things.
It works on a 4-up for everything but the keeper. So it's random, and you have to babysit all of your units with heroes.
And that's where maybe your 1S comes in, I think, with Daughters of Cain.
It's just that they're double resilient, like Nurgle. It's not the damage.
Yeah. I guess
tons of armies do crazy damage, and tons of armies have high movement, and tons of armies have access to teleports or deep strikes and stuff. And all that stuff is fine.
Yeah.
It's when you get to crazy resiliency in different ways. So
like you're invisible, you know, like
yeah, DOK is crazy resilient because they have double 5-up on the one unit and 5-ups on just about everything else. FEC is crazy resilient because you don't get to test that resiliency because you die.
Also, they've summoned, 800 points of shit.
And they have extra bodies. And Skaven are resilient because all of their heroes can retreat during combat when activated first. They have tons of chaff, which is like resilience. All of it's battle shock immune, and they can kill you while tying you up, which means that you don't get to them.
Also, they're out of range. Yeah. Also, they've teleported a pair of spells into your deployment zone, so you will absolutely.
And you can't move. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the best you can do is shuffle 5 inches up at best, turn 1, they just stopped all the damage, right? Because you didn't do anything. So they waste you. In other words, Skaven wastes your time.
Yeah.
With Slaanesh, you have that 4-up to make people go slow if you position right? But you're at least rolling. And then secondly, if anything, it's true they do tons of damage if they activate first. If they don't, they're actually dead. Remember how I complain about Namarti Thralls dying to anything if somebody charges them?
Yeah.
Well, that's their entire army, even their 360-point greater demons.
Yeah.
Like, if anybody activates before them in combat with anything that isn't, 5 Liberators, they're fucking dead.
Well,
now they get to summon stuff, but even still, if you're killing their, massive regiments, they're not going to be able to keep up. And sometimes you fight entire armies of 1-wound guys, and you don't get a lot of depravity from that. Fire Slayers, AA. They are really, really slow. And that sucks.
Skeletons are really slow.
And their range sucks. They don't have range.
Yeah.
And they're expensive now. So, your unit of 30 Hearthguard Berserkers is 600 points. That is huge. That's a lot of points. But it's also the most resilient unit in the whole game, and it does lots of damage.
Well,
it doesn't... It's another one of those DOK things where you have the best defense and the best offense. Except unlike DOK, you're slow as fuck instead of run and charge on everything. And you can deep strike them. As much as we talk about Ghoul King on Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragon killing 60 grots in one turn, which I watched happen at Adepticon, Fire Slayers can participate in the activation wars if they want, but but a Ghoul King can't just kill 30. It can't.
No.
They're too resilient even for that. These guys are actually Spartans. Every battle with Fire Slayers is Thermopylae. It's your 30-man block against 2,000 points of the enemy, and they probably can't kill you. They need to play the whole avoid that 600 points and hope you can't score the objectives thing. They got to do that.
That's kind of cool, though. I think
it is cool.
Really awesome for an army design.
Yeah, they finally got the game rules to back up their lore. Right. They're only missing models now, and then they'd be the perfect army.
Right. Well, they're getting one more model now.
Yeah, and he had the genius idea to put on some fucking pants and some boots, and now he looks cool. if only they would have chose to do that for all the other units. Why are they wearing diapers? God damn it. Anyway. But yeah, solid AA. It's hard to deal with that amount of durability with good damage and a whole bunch of different hero buffs and deep striking and just they got the good stuff.
Ignore that they're participating in the activation wars. Pick a unit the efficient good units in the game Witch Elves, Enlightened, whatever it is. They can actually just take the punch.
Yeah, they can just take it.
They can just take it, and that's pretty fucking that's awesome. Big win.
Yeah, new Fire Slayers is 2019 slap fighting competition winners, like where you just stand there and slap each other until somebody passes out. Like Fire Slayers is the grand champion 2019 of that. Like they'll win.
I've watched those YouTube clips.
Yeah. So with Fire Slayers, it's also early, just like Slaanesh. Some people think they're better than I've put them here. Some people think they're worse than what I've put them here.
I would put them no worse.
Time will tell. I think this is where they belong.
People might need to figure out an answer to them very soon if we start seeing just 600 points of Hearthguard plus support heroes, the meta, and that's just they're going to become one of those things where you just have to be conscious of how you're going to tie it up, how you're going to avoid it, because they really are just, it's like Lancelot in Monty Python, and just and you just see him charging, and they cut back to him, and he gets no closer, and then just suddenly he's up on, and you're like, ah, and he just kills the one guard and keeps running. That's gonna be Fire Slayer, just with the drum roll, and they're gonna catch you eventually, and you can't run away from them forever.
Yeah. Also, for some reason, it must be a mental thing. When people see 30 Hearthguard Berserkers in a big block right in the middle, and their opponent will say something like my picking up the pen story from Magic, they'll be like, well, I don't have my buffs yet, because you went first, and people are like, I'm gonna charge those 30 Hearthguard Berserkers. That's don't do it. Don't be fooled. They charge them, they bounce the fuck off, and they die.
Well, that's like getting an extra 12 inches of movement for them. Is if you
they got to pile in at least. There you go.
No, it's like the Hearthguard just themselves move. The earth rotates underneath them, and they're still standing in the same place, and you're just up near them, and this is what they wanted. Yeah,
it's like you put the enemy on a treadmill, and he just moves towards you. It's perfect. Yeah. And also, they're Battle Shock immune around objectives. So the army forces you to play well, which I think is a clever little mechanic they added to it. I like that.
Yeah.
Are they better than IDK? I actually don't know. Who knows? I think IDK loses to Fire Slayers probably, but I haven't played the matchup, so I don't know. I don't think IDK has the damage to deal with anything Fire Slayers is doing, but they certainly do have the movement to try to win objectives. But then again, they're elite, so I don't know. I need to play the matchup to know.
It depends on... I think this is a battle plan thing. I think you got a shot on certain battle plans, and simply don't on others.
I think IDK... with IDK, you just have to play to the battle plan. You have to play objectives, because you can't kill Fire Slayers. You're probably used to killing everything with Morsar Guard. It ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work this time, buddy. As far as IDK... They're real good. It's those boats. Yeah, it's the boats and the real good ambush. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the ambush, because the eels are just so good. 6 or 9 eels will probably kill whatever on the charge, from Nagash to Plague Bearers to whatever. Not Hearthguard Berserkers, but what are you gonna do? And they're not overly hurt by total commitment, and they're still good on the hero capturing battle plans. And your boat game is gonna be your main skill tester. Well, there are armies where there's a critical piece of the puzzle and you need to get good with that thing, and that's the thing that determines a lot of your skill ceiling, and IDK is boat placement. The better you get at that, the better your matchups become.
Well, and you got to play every battle plan to know optimal, and armies.
So they're a little elite and they're kind of glass cannon, but the eels are so good, and the boats are so good.
And the plan is good.
And the plan is good. And you have a good backup plan as well. You're not without your bad matchups. So obviously there's that.
Which is why they're not S.
Right. I suppose. I don't think they would be S even if they didn't have bad matchups. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know if they're doing something that crazy exactly.
I feel like the matchups they win so definitively compared to some other armies, though. Like, they're the last true alpha that everyone hated for a long time. Like, they're the last. There are other alpha lists, but this is the last true. What everyone thought Gav Bomb was. This is what it. This is what it.
Yeah,
was.
people were so concerned about Gav and Evocators, and then people played them for 1 month, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't actually that good." And you want just about the time where like things are maybe gonna fall apart, strike first with everybody in the army. So their Flesh Eater matchup is interesting.
It's really down to the
it's a lot of running away and priority. And then turn 3 really, really needing to have that turn. Because if you have the turn, then you can actually participate in combat against Flesh Eater. And if they have the turn, then you can't. And all of your stuff dies. IDK real good for basically just those 2 reasons. Their spells are good, but they're not very good at casting them, and they don't take any more than 1 wizard anyway. Really, it's boats and how good Morsar Guard are. So the next GHB is going to be a concern for IDK. If Morsar Guard get overreacted to by the General's Handbook, i.e. 200 for 3, and they lose battle line if a Kellyan King is a general, IDK is primed and ready to drop down into, like, C.5. And I'm talking if nothing else changes.
Right.
But
they didn't overreact with Daughters. They
didn't do anything to Daughters for a whole year.
So, I don't... they're not as big of a problem as Daughters. So I don't think they'll just castrate them and then leave them,
Yeah, and metagame wise, they're one of the few armies that has a potentially decent matchup against Skaven. Mm-hmm. Skaven has to really deploy annoyingly to protect against getting ambushed. And the great thing about IDK is that if you perfectly protect against their ambush, and a lot of times after you're done deploying your last 2 deployments are who you choose to deep strike sometimes. And so your opponent has to turtle up, and then your last 2 deployments are just eels on the board. Yeah, nobody's deep striking. It's fine. You just set up like a chump for no reason, got them,
Right.
Their centerpieces were, they thought they would be way better than they really are. That turtle, if you're going to cost the turtle like Enlightened are costed, and I mean like aggressively, turtle's like 280, 300 maybe. And Caster Eidolon is like 320. He's Archon. Caster Eidolon should cost Archon points, and he's worse than Archon. And there's a bunch of other things as well, but those are like the main things. And then the Thralls should probably be 120 easily, but on 32s with 1 inch reach, they should be 120 easy, and have a massive reg discount. Reavers should be 100. I suspect that might actually be the case. It might be that Thralls go to 120 and Reavers go to 100. I'm not sure. And Lotan should be like 60 or something. I don't know what's the minimum a hero can cost.
Negative 40. He should give you 40 points for taking him.
I could see in a world of Reavers at 100 and Lotan at 60, I could see people putting 20 Reavers around Lotan and rerolling ones to hit with their bows. That's okay. Because it doesn't say melee. Like, that's kind of neat. That's a neat little combo. It's like a 260 point combo for some...
Yeah, but that's
modest,
like
for some modest range damage.
Yeah, but that's like running 80 Ungor Raiders in Desolating Brayherd.
And it's cute, yeah.
And it'll be fun when it works, and it will work, rather often. It's just like, it's not going to be the good thing to do compared to what else you should be doing.
Yeah, but I'll take cute and sometimes works over just bad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
There still should be stuff that's cute and sometimes works in the game.
Absolutely.
Everything doesn't need to be sequiturs. But everything should be closer to sequiturs than it is. That's all I'm saying. Beasts of Chaos. What a success story.
Until they nerf Enlightened, and then it's no longer a success story.
And then it is, and then like the snows of yesteryear, it is gone from this earth.
It is fucking gone.
It's the same as IDK. BOC and IDK players are both, they have bated breath for the GHB, because if Enlightened end up sucking and Morsar Guard end up sucking, these 2 armies are going to be brothers in arms in the flawed tier. Mm-hmm. It's not that Bestigors aren't good. They're good. And it's not even that they're overcosted. They're not. It's just it's an army of only good troops. And there's no, like, Skaven have a problem of no, like, giant flying monster with an artifact. BOC shares this problem, except it doesn't have the best range in the game and immune to battle shock forever. And teleporting. Like, started putting up some good results and stuff. It was hard to build lists for and hard to play and hard to buy the models for, honestly, depending on what country you're in. So it took a while to get here. But it's pretty good. And you can play it as a Slaanesh army and be better.
Don't give away the secret technology.
I can edit that out if you want. Like, if you're if you truly...
No.
Oh, wait, I can't edit that out because a Patreon guy gave me Chuck E. Cheese dollars so that I could fix his Beasts of Chaos Slaanesh list. So I guess the secret's out one way or another.
Well, we had the secret armies thing.
I mean, we knew about it already, but apparently he did too, because he's been playing this, and he gave me his list he was playing, and I just souped it up a little bit.
We had the super secret. So there's the secret army, and then there's the top secret army. He was just on the top secret army.
Mr. Kretz, top secrets.
Top secrets. There we go. Yeah. So this is the top secret army, right? And the math hammer on Bestigors and Slaanesh.
Or they called them Bestigors of Slaanesh. That's their name in the HOS book. And that's good and clever. Because now Bestigors of Slaanesh can be 140. Or stay at 120. And just Bestigors can be 100. And nobody's harmed. And they're called something different, and so there you go. I assume that's why that's the case.
I mean,
I like to pretend that they're that smart. Leave me to my delusions.
Sometimes they surprise me with their foresight.
Yeah.
And
and Beasts of Chaos themselves, like, they're not so reliant on their spells like Disciples of Zinchar with those same Enlightened. And none of their casters are any good. And by good, I mean good wizards. Like, they don't get bonuses to cast. They can't reroll anything.
No range modifiers.
Yeah, no range. They're just... But it's not like Great Bray Shaman isn't good. He gives +3 move to everybody around him. That's fucking great.
Well, it's excellent.
And your spells, when they resolve, are actually brutal. -1 save penalty plus something else. -1 save penalty plus something else. Wildfire Taurus. Like, these are spells that don't resolve very often if your opponent is trying to counter you. But when they happen, they're actually pretty brutal.
Yeah, when you roll the boxcars.
And you do have summoning. It's not the best summoning. But it's not the worst summoning.
It's good. The fact that it's board edge is very strong. And I think that's kind of
the fact that it doesn't have to be around a hero is so good.
I think that's the unsung hero of their summoning. The fact that it's board edge means they're like the things they summon are in the fight that much sooner.
As far as GHB, I'd like to see Beasts of Chaos Bestigors at 100. That's aggressive, but with what's happening to Enlighten, they're going to need something like that. I like Dragon Ogre Shoggoth being 160. I think he's a bit pricey at 180 for just his spell, which is really kind of what you're taking him for.
Every monster needs to
every single monster needs to go down drastically. Fucking drastically. Cygor should be 130. Gorgon maybe 170 or something like that. I'm talking drastically down. My hands are tied. You've made the War Scrolls so bad that they basically need to cost like min-sized unit of battle line points to be playable. And this is where you put us with these War Scrolls. They're so fucking bad.
Yeah.
For Cygor and Gorgon. And these are supposed to be the dudes that you're running in this. Bulgors should be 130 as well. They don't...
Bulgors, I don't understand why they're more expensive than freaking Enlightened. I don't get it.
That's crazy. It's so crazy.
What did they see on this War Scroll that I don't see?
I don't know. They surely... I think maybe game-wide they just undervalue flying or something? I don't know.
Maybe. And flying and being able to add to the unit.
Yeah. With a shaman.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much that's for Beasts of Chaos. Their monsters should be playable, especially the Cygor and the Gorgon, and they're absolutely not. And it seems like 130 for a 12 wound however many wounds they have, I don't know, 12 wound monster. It seems really low, but I have to impress upon you that it's that low. They're almost at 10 points a wound because that's how shitty the War Scrolls are. You fucked up. If you really intended on making them 200-point monsters, consider looking at some of the other recent books you've made for what you think their power level should be at for non-flying move 8 guys or move 10 guys or whatever they are.
Yeah, oftentimes with like 1 attack.
With 1 attack. Ooh. And here we have Legions of Nagash. The meta changed, and he dropped down to A, just as we said.
We knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
We never thought that his
every time we ever talked about Legions, we're like, it's worse than Daughters, but probably the second best because of the meta. You nerf shooting, and then this is what happens.
Like, you thought it was it's not as good as everyone thinks. It's just it has some sort of false life going on right now,
and it's in decline. A great decline from where it was before the last series of books came out. A lot of people have these guys in S tier, or like they're like, how can these not be on the top and all that? But it seems like most people who think Legions of Nagash are really good are like, how do I say they're casual players without insulting them? It's Death Star formation, kind of slow, locks down spellcasting, so that's good. I'm not saying they're not good. They're good. Look at how high they are. They're competitive. Sometimes they win tournaments. They're really good.
Yeah,
they're not close. They're not even close to the best army. 7th, probably. I could see someone argue that they're better than BOC. Maybe, I don't know. But like, they're not as good as all this other stuff, and they lose to all this other stuff.
I mean, Grimghast Reapers are still a good unit. Skeletons are still a good unit.
Bring back 30 of them is still good. Like,
they're just good. They're just good. And the flaws that they've always had, the mobility, the Death Star formation stuff, all that stuff's been there, and it's still there. The telegraphed summoning and resummoning, like, the points you can body block, the linchpin heroes, like, it's all still there. I swear some of their drop-off is just people really did finally figure out how to play against them. Because it's straightforward. It's simple.
How do you beat Nagash? You play to the battle plan because he's slow and he can't project power very well. He's got a partial Death Star formation that he's got to be in. And he spends 1,000 points on heroes. Like, that's how you do it.
And don't waste your points on spellcasting, which, like, the meta was super crazed with spellcasting there for a little while.
Yeah, which further bumped him up in the meta, because everybody is like, ooh, endless spells exist. I gotta take a bunch of wizards for no reason to cast Realm Lores. And you're just like, okay, I guess I'll just counterbalance top all your spells then. And you wasted 600 points on wizards.
Yeah.
And so people are now finally starting to not do that. Shooting came back.
Forcing spells into lists that just, it doesn't belong in.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I'm going to ally in a 100-point wizard because it just, like, my army needs to be able to participate. No, you don't. You don't. You didn't before.
Yeah. You do need to have at least one wizard. You need one wizard, usually. Because you have to unsummon the Warp Lightning Vortex, or you'll lose the game.
Well, I guess. Or priests that do the equivalent.
Or priests that do it. Like, you have to get rid of the Warp Lightning Vortex or stop it somehow, otherwise you'll lose the game. Or someone will shackle your Stonehorn with the base touching the base, and the thing will just be dead, basically, for the whole game. Like, you have to stop that, but that's like a 140-point wizard. Or priest who can do it. This isn't what people were doing, you know. They were taking 3 or 4 wizards, and Nagash taught them who was the supreme necromancer. But I was called insane for putting LON in the equivalent of tier 3 here, or whatever. Like, this low, quote-unquote. And I'm like, well, they lose to Flesh Eater, and they lose to Skaven, and they have a hard game against Doc, and they have a hard game against Slanesh, and they have a hard game against Fire Slayers, and they probably lose to IDK, so where exactly do they belong?
Well, it's kind of the pub stomper army, I think.
Pretty much. Because they just grind them out. For the most part, they have mostly a great matchup against random stuff.
Well, there is like a disturbing trend going on now with the game too, which is a lot of armies are getting like free anti-magic, and I'm not happy.
But anyway, this is where they are. They're real good. GGR is still real good. Hell, just 80 skeletons is still actually real good. Big units of Black Knights and stuff, moving around the table, grinding people out. Hand of Dust on a Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon. What Grizzlegore problem? There is none. You give him the finger. It's not reliable, and he's going to try to stay out of range of it, but that just means he's not in the fight. Good.
He's not in range, and then he is, and he kills everything anyway. Like, that's the thing, is like, he's not in range.
He's not in range, and he's waiting for those skeletons in a circle around Nagash that stop his base from landing close to Nagash. He's waiting for those to go away. And while he's doing that, you're losing all the objectives.
Yeah, it's not the best matchup for Nagash, actually.
But you got game. Like with
like,
LON, you have there's a light at the end of the tunnel in most matchups. You have at least potentially an answer to stuff. You're not fucking dead in the water.
No.
You're not. Like before you've deployed. Like, your opponent's playing Grizzlegore and you're playing Ironjaws, you literally have no counterplay. You're dead. Then we have Tzeentch, which is here kind of as a potential more than a stat, although it's done well a few times, but it's really hard to play. And when you're playing it on optimal cylinders, you're about as good as probably like Beast of Chaos or something. You're leaning on many of the same units. But you don't have to be. It's just a clockwork machine. The House of Cards can fall down on these guys. They're better than people think. They're not the crap that got over-nerfed for 2nd edition that people thought they were. They were just really hard to build lists for and play. And everybody who previously had an army saw just about 80% of their army become kind of unusable. And so they just sold out. Like, why keep playing? If you're going to have to buy a new army worth of units anyway, you might as well just buy a new army. So they're underrepresented as well.
I think there's still some really, really solid spells.
And their spells do tons of mortal wounds.
There's still some really good spell lists in there that people just kind of have forgotten about. Blue Scribes are great. You know, like, there's combos you can build off of them.
You'll be happy to note that people have decided that...
The Curseling?
No. Curseling's probably just too cute, because if you don't play against wizards, he's a waste of points. He doesn't do anything. And so it's probably not worth it. People have decided in the competitive DOT community that actually knows what they're talking about. Ogre Thaumaturge is good. You'll be pleased to note.
Good. Swolmaturge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord of Change and Kairos are just way expensive. They're point costed for 1st edition. They're not point costed for 2nd edition.
Well, and the other thing is, like,
380, 320 I think 320 for both of those guys. In Tzeentch, you're way more elite than you want to be because all your stuff is kind of expensive. When you're playing a Tzeentch list, like, you finish building it and you're like, all right, I'm just about at 2,000 points. Well, yikes, this is all I have?
This is the fundamental problem with spell armies. You are putting in a lot of points onto casting spells, which means you're giving up board presence, you're giving up bodies, you're giving up wounds. Like,
well, you're double giving it up because you need to protect them. They need chaff.
Yeah.
Your dudes cost an extra 60 points because you need the door.
Or a vortex or whatever your shtick is. Yeah, it's unfortunate but true. So, like, spells they're awesome. I love magic. And on one hand, it is still kind of like a lingering least interactive phase, quote unquote. But they made Unbind's kind of universal, and it's all right for people to have buff spells. I mean, shooting isn't really interactive either, and spells are very rarely...
Shooting's less interactive.
Right.
I mean combat's not interactive either if you're playing against Grizzlegore or General, because you don't go. It's just your opponent. But yeah, they're good. They're just hard. They're just hard to play.
Right.
Speaking of good but hard to play, the Boingy Boys, although not really the Boingy Boys, actually just a million -1s to hit and like 200 guys. Gloomspite gets. These have been slowly increasing as people got more and more used to playing them because they're the hardest army to play, just about.
Highest skill floor, probably by far.
Yeah. Actually, Tzeentch is pretty hard too, but yeah, the GG is real hard to play. And it's taken people a while to get good with them, but as they have, we've seen them crop up more and more in top 3s and top 10s and stuff.
tons of like random too, so you had to compensate, and a lot of traps and list building. People really wanted Troggoths to be good, and they really wanted to play their Spider Fang. It's like, no, you really do just kind of play the new shit.
You really do just try to get as many -1s to hit as you possibly can in a list, and the most guys.
Yeah, and by the way, like, have disgustingly good spell phases. Actually,
your spells are real good, yeah. If only they had allegiance abilities. The Gits players that I talk to, they're like, yeah, we pretty much pretend like we don't have allegiance abilities because you can't count on them. The things we get underneath the moon aren't really that good anyway, except for the stacking spell stuff ones. Mm-hmm. And every other game, the moon either just stays put on some random turn or jumps over the middle or is in a quadrant, and your guys need to be wholly in that quadrant. And I'm talking like the formation is a fucking square up against a random part near the middle of the board. And so if you have like 2 extra guys, or if they're in a circle, they're not wholly within that square quadrant, like, it's so annoying. And so they pretty much play like they don't have battle traits, and either take Scrag Rot and when it's in the middle just hold it there, or don't and just play like they don't have battle traits, which is a shame. Building lists is so hard. Like, we talk about keyword bingo with Khorne because there's this stupid divide between mortals and demons for no reason, where like some stuff buffs only mortals and some stuff buffs only demons. And it seems to only exist to annoy someone when they're building a list. There doesn't seem to be a good reason for it. Gloomspite gets, man. Every single unit has random-ass keywords that matter, and some that are the same race but aren't the same keyword, and it's so annoying, and it's really complicated to build lists for it. And a lot of the coolest looking models are trash.
That comes back to the skill floor, and people have figured out the best lists now, and then people are just going to start copying them, and you're going to see them performing. The other thing I was going to say is regarding their allegiance abilities. Yeah, moon's random, etc., but they have a lot of abilities in their war scrolls. They're probably the only army who has all good endless spells. Like, every one of their endless spells is pretty good. And you
Dude,
get
the mushroom is so cool. It gives you access to their spell lores. That's such a cool idea.
Yeah,
so you can summon the mushroom, and your allied wizard can now cast your Hand of Gork and stuff. Like, that's awesome.
He's tripping balls like the rest of them. It's great.
Yeah, he took their drugs. What do you want? He knows their secrets. I have him competitive. A tier.
Competitive.
This is, I mean, this is kind of wishful thinking in a way, but like, if you're playing the army well, this is where they are. It's just really hard to do so. That's all.
But let's assume, I think for the tier list, you kind of got to assume people of requisite skill.
Yeah.
And on the correct list or correct.
I put stuff on the tier that they're being played ideally, and if that's really hard to do, then they get an asterisk, and I just mention it. So that's where GG sits. As far as GHB, I mean, it's the same thing as Cygor for these guys. You have mushrooms, like they were eating some when they point costed the Trog boss and the heroes with the Trog keyword. Those war scrolls are fucking terrible and way expensive. And that's a shame because the models are glorious looking, so a lot of the clouds of dudes with random -1 to hits everywhere need to go down. And it's a shame that you have to take Gabapalooza as a one-size-fits-all instead of being able to take a few of the guys out of there. Down to viable, which doesn't mean bad. It's at the center of the list. There's 7 tiers and there's one in the middle. The middle one isn't bad. I did this on purpose. Khorne's gotten top 3s recently. Nurgle's got top 3s recently. SCE has gotten maybe 1. Nighthaunt, same thing. Like, you can play a tier B and get top 3 at a tournament. You can do it. It's not very common, but sometimes it happens, and that's what it means to be viable, I think.
I think Khorne has positioned itself decent against the good armies, but somebody's got to be the worst of the good armies. You're like the new armies, good. I don't want to make that that weird misnomer, like new equals good, because there are newer armies that are performing worse than older armies,
Yeah.
But as far as they really, when they made this tome, they had 2E in mind, second ed in mind, and it shows. They're just so it's just them and Stormcast Eternals are two sides of the same coin. These are just armies that a lot of that attracts a lot of players. You know, and it's like Ryu and Ken. They're not allowed to be the absolute best thing.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be the like middle of the road guys with the tools to be able to succeed if you get lucky and do well.
Yeah,
which is probably the definition of balanced. So like Khorne is pretty balanced actually.
Right.
It has some activation phase stuff, but nothing crazy.
Nothing overt.
Yeah, they can put it on a Bloodthirster, but I mean, no insult meant to Khorne players, but Bloodthirsters aren't like that great. They look cool, and in the lore they're cool, although they job for everyone. But
they have few swingy attacks.
They don't have a lot of attacks, and they're fragile as fuck. So I mean, what do you want?
Yeah, yeah. But I love Wrathmongers. I think they're great. They basically put an allegiance ability on their War Scroll. Like, this is a command ability on a War Scroll. So good. Blood Warriors. Those are the ones that got good. Hashtag got good. And that's nice.
Yeah, dude, you can give them 3-up saves, and they pile in after they die.
I like that. I love it's super corny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a shame that their Blood Tithe is reset to 0 whenever you use it. It's the only summoning ability like that in the whole game.
Like, yeah, you can't hoard it.
Depravity, you can hoard corruption, you can hoard whatever your BOC thing is called, you can hoard your spell points for DOT, you can hoard your summoning points for Seraphon, but not for Khorne. And I'm thinking of a world where they let you hoard them, and it doesn't seem like a terrifically overpowered world.
That's the thing, is that what stops them from being quote-unquote competitive?
No, it just stops them from being fun. That's my true answer. That's a bullshit rule, and I'm sad that they made it that way.
Why? Why? Did they just not want you to have as much fun as you could have had?
Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, but he is adamant that it must be wasted all the time.
And he's really stingy about it. Like, oh, no. No,
I'm sorry. You can't...
You murdered 1,000 guys, you get 1 unbind, sir. Like,
yeah.
He's really
no, I'm sorry, you can only summon 1 unit of 5 around one hero somewhere. You can't summon 2. Yeah.
He's just like Scrooge McDuck.
Except with blood tokens, yeah.
Like fucking blood and blood tokens instead of gold coins.
Yeah,
like...
and he sounds like Rodney Dangerfield when you're asking him for money. He's like, oh, this place is falling apart, yeah. Really strapped for cash, buddy. I guess I can't have you unbind 2 spells. Oh, jeez. And then Tzeentch is like, oh yeah, you can just keep your spell points, that's fine. You can summon some stuff. You want some blues, some pinks? I'll give you whatever you want. Hey, Khorne, how come you're so stingy about this? Ugh.
Can't believe it.
I'm getting no respect from these other Chaos Gods around here.
No respect. No respect at all.
So anyway, that's Khorne. For GHB, really, I think a lot of their stuff is fine. I would like Skull Reapers. Whatever the other kit you can make out of Wrathmongers, Skull Reapers, I think they're called. They should be...
Reapers?
Yeah, I'd like them down. What I really wish they would have done is given them 2 damage weapons, for fuck's sake, but oh well. Yeah, I think those could afford to be a little cheaper.
We're just...
Honestly, blood letters should just be 100 again, now that they aren't so great. They're only good with every single perfectly... meticulously positioned Venn diagram buff of extra attacks on them. And when they don't have that, they're not so great. And I think the Bloodthirsters are a little pricey for a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see Korgus cool cheaper just because I want people to take him because he's hilarious. The motherfucker RKOs from out of nowhere into combat.
Right.
So you think Yetis are good? He activates from and piles in 8, dude.
Yeah.
He isn't even in your house, and he enters combat and kills you. Like, he comes in through the garage and runs, like, 50 feet with his dog. Like, in your bed, like in fucking Braveheart. And he just fucking hits you with a mace.
Yeah, you're like getting ready to take a shower, and
you got you got your fucking nightcap on and your slippies. And he's in your driveway, and then you see plus combat appear like in WoW, and then he's just fucking there.
Oh, And you fucking look up, he's like sitting in your car, like glaring at you from the garage, like fucking charges in before
just
you
waiting
have
for the
time to,
combat phase. He's just fucking here. His dog is just eating your toilet, like chewing on it, crunching the porcelain in its mouth, and he's killed you. Like, so yeah, he should be cheaper so that we get more Korg's cool memes because he's great.
Yeah.
Oh, and they're Greater Daemon from Forge World that can't change points in the GHB because it's a different company somehow. That shit should go way down, dude. And it should have the command ability that the other ones have. Only better.
Bigger bubble.
Yeah, we can't really change too many War Scrolls, except for really problematic stuff like, you know, Warp Lightning Cannon, or Warp Lightning Vortex, but if we were changing War Scrolls, then I would say every single thing that says either mortals or demons is just friendly Khorne. It's annoying enough to build lists for that, but whatever. Nurgle, also viable. Jack of all trades, master of none. Every once in a while they get a top 3 somewhere.
I like Nurgle in this meta right now. I really do like
Thricefold Defilement is sweet. I think it's their best build.
Yeah, and if you were about to put them on the shelf after like Legion of Nagash was just rampant for the last 6 months or whatever, you can take them off the shelf. He's not.
Yeah, you can cast your spells again on 7s. You can do it again.
Yeah, you're allowed to cast spells again.
Yeah.
You were always lying about how important they were. No, I don't really need my spells, but then every time you aren't getting them off, you're just angry. But yeah, like Thricefold Befoulment is pretty cool. I would love to see, the Plight Kings get unmodified 6s, and they're just the entire Nurgle army is like hashtag.
That should be a GHB change.
Yeah.
Because that really needs to be.
Like the whole army is just.
I consider that bringing them into 2nd edition. Blight Kings should hit on Nat 6s. Should explode on Nat 6s, I mean.
Yep.
And, like, as far as GHB, like, so many points in Nurgle need to change, it's crazy. Yeah. Have you ever looked through all their heroes? They have a Stormcast amount of heroes. And then, like, 3 battle line.
To be fair, that's a lot of chaos, though.
And all of their heroes are fantastically overcosted, like Orgoth's Daemon Spew and Morbidex Twiceborn, and I can't believe I just remembered both of those full names off the top of my head, but I did it.
Good names. Well, and it's the Diablo thing. They have like the most Diablo names in the game.
Almost all of their heroes are like way expensive for what they do, and no one ever takes them for any reason. And that's a shame because all of their models look fucking awesome except for Plague Bearers.
I want to see their Plague Drones, their flyy dudes, get like aggressively costed. I would love that.
I think Plague Drones are good right now. I wish the ones that looked cooler were better. I wish the ones with the Blight Kings on the back, the big sides and stuff.
Yeah, those ones.
The Puskgoyle Blight Lords, those dudes are sick. I wish those guys went aggressive.
Those are the ones I was talking about.
Because those guys look fucking awesome. Yeah.
Sorry, I confuse all the names of the various undulating masses that are.
Yeah, that's fine. I think on my video I called the feculent Gnarlmaw like the putrid Gnarlmaw or something, and somebody's like, actually it's the feculent Gnarlmaw, and I'm like, God damn it, I knew that. I fucking knew that. Oh well.
It just looks like somebody with what is that? The
Tryptophobia nightmare. Yeah.
It just looks like it's just tryptophobia nightmare vagina. It's just not okay.
And everyone you play against, even if they've played Nurgle before, always says on turn 2, "Man, you're faster than I thought," even if they've already played you.
Yeah.
Because War Scroll says move 4, but
I mean they have Mario Kart turbo boosters in their army. Like they just get to like little arrows.
Sylvaneth got something like that just now, only way fucking worse. But we'll talk about them later.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nurgle's good. It's just they have a lot of unplayable, beautiful models that are way expensive and/or suck, like Sloppy Biopiper and Spoil Pox Scrivener. Jesus, how do I know these? I'm killing it with remembering these like weirdo RP names, I guess, with Nurgle. But I don't even play this army.
I still struggle to remember which Stormcast unit does what, and it's been.
Like, I got those down. I got the
like a year and a half. Like,
well, because those aren't real. They're all like
they're just made up.
Phony Romany
fake,
Greeky names, yeah.
Yeah, fake Latin, like
yeah.
Whatever. What's adjudicator? Like who really knows?
Shoot bow with a shock bow.
I understand. Skeleton warrior. I know what that is. It's
right.
a skeleton that fights you in a warrior-like manner.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even like Hearthguard Berserker. These are the elite berserkers. They're the ones that guard something and they berserk. So it says that they can take damage because they're guards, and they can deal damage because they're berserkers. Like it makes sense.
Yeah. And Volkite berserkers, Volkite, as we know, is Latin for bad now. So that's
that's how you know.
Yeah, and so that's how I remember. It's easy.
Yeah, easy.
That's like when you're trying to remember the difference, and a lot of people ask about this, between, in Sylvaneth, you have branch Witch and branch Wraith. So which one is which? Well, that's easy. Which one is bad? The Witch. There you go. Now you can remember easily. But yeah, Stormcast Eternals. Speaking of not being able to tell the difference between all their names, these guys are B viable. So I got shit for putting LON in all the way down in A tier, although I think I'm right. And Ian agrees with me, and he's a big time tournament man, much more than me. So I'm vindicated.
Right.
And I got shit on the Facebook crowd for putting SCE all the way down in viable instead of broken.
Yeah, well, our audience, yeah.
Because Facebook players lose to Ballista. And so they're like, that's fucking broken. Now,
well, you just said Facebook players lose to deploying. And this really suddenly has made me realize why people's opinions are so skewed about the game. They haven't figured out basic things like target priority and deployment yet.
Well, they don't play a lot. I mean, that's just it.
Well, they just read War Scrolls and like people's posts, and they watch a lot of battle reports. But you ever notice that like a lot of the battle reports are like Gutbusters versus old Fire Slayers, or like...
I know that a lot of battle reports are like Ideneth Deepkin versus Beastclaw Raiders, and then the guy who's talking about his IDK list is like, alright, so here's my list. I took everything that is utter, unequivocal trash.
I have 2 turtles.
And, yeah, I have 2 turtles and an Eidolon, the caster version. 3 min units of Reavers, and, like, a Tidecaster General. And I took every endless spell. And then, like, he loses, and he's like, IDK suck. And then everyone in the comments is like, yeah, IDK fucking suck. Or he plays the worst, like, Khorne list I've ever seen, you know? And so I just don't watch battle reports. Like, I go onto battle report, they always come up on my suggested, because I look at a lot of AoS stuff, and they're like, watch this battle report. Okay. I watch 11 minutes of every battle report. Just about. Because in the first 11 minutes, they talk about their lists, and then I can safely shut it off, because I know that it's fully irrelevant. It's like, do I want to watch a game between the worst Nurgle list I've ever seen and the worst Stormcast Eternals list I've ever seen? Honestly, no. I don't. I like how I've come up with a new term for casuals, is the Facebook people. I guess that's my euphemism. But look, Stormcast have one trick, and it's a good trick. But they are a one-trick pony. And it's 4 Ballista, land anywhere, and blow probably 1 or 2 things up. And then they try to win a double turn. That's the trick. And it's a good trick, because ranged is good, and double exploding hits is good, and -2 rend is good. It leaves them open to a brutal countercharge that'll probably kill all the Ballista, but sometimes you get double turns, and then after everything's down, you're slow as fuck, and it's a struggle to win on objectives. And you auto-lose total commitment, and you struggle against even other B and C, and some even D tier armies, in like the 6 objective battle plans and stuff.
Right.
And, I mean, that's that. Like, you can't struggle or auto-lose on a statistically significant amount of battle plans that tend to be in tournaments and be in A tier. You just can't.
Yeah.
So, Stormcast maybe is the other pub slayer. Against somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, like, Ballista will just wreck them.
It's the 3s and 3s 4-up save thing. When you first start playing the game.
That feels very consistent.
Yeah, it feels really strong and really good, and you have 2 wounds per model, and you can teleport half your army at the beginning of the game, and all that stuff feels really good, and it really is a good place to start learning the game and playing the game. But as you go, not everybody's army plays the game fair like that. I won't even say like that, like not implying that what Fire Slayers is doing is unfair. It's just like that's basic.
Well, no, I mean
you're a peppermint mocha in UGG boots and like a college sweatshirt that you college that you didn't go to. You're basic. You're basic.
Look, I like peppermint mocha because it's like hot cocoa it has the decency to be filled with caffeine.
Yeah,
so I like it. I don't wear clops or whatever the fuck those things are called.
None of the Crocs yet. You're not
the
you're
Nugs.
Not rocking,
I don't know. I don't know what those shoes are. I don't go to Starbucks to get them. Starbucks is outside of my house. I wouldn't go there. It's dangerous out there. But no, I mean, but like for Stormcast, I wouldn't even recommend it to new players. I actively don't.
Really?
I say that it's not.
Does it skews how you perceive the game?
No, it's not a good army for new players.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Really? Okay.
I think
what's the new player army?
Nurgle.
Really?
No question.
Okay.
First of all, it's the easiest to paint. One of the easiest to paint is Nurgle. It's easier to paint ugly than it is to paint beautiful. It's like an objective fact. Okay. Green plus wash plus random colors all over the place is perfectly fine for Nurgle, and it actually looks decent. It's kind of elite. They're really defensive, so
you don't need to
your mistakes aren't as crippling as others. You can be fast. You can be fast if you want to be, and you'll learn about where to position the Feculent Gnarlmaw. You'll learn about placing terrain and kind of care about terrain to learn. You'll fully deploy. You'll start to learn about summoning and think ahead, and you have a heal phase. You have a hero phase of spells and this wheel, and you got to plan ahead. And it might seem a little overwhelming at first, but that's good because you don't want to become bored later. Because at first you could just roll on the Wheel of Corruption, and then whatever fucking happens every turn, and it's fine. And then later you can start controlling it, and then even later you can start choosing when to control it and when not to, because you're planning for this turn I do this, next turn I do this, because it's going to go here.
If I may counterpoint.
Yeah.
I think it's Fire Slayers for all the same reasons. I said Stormcast Eternals, except they're great.
Except they're great. Yeah. Specifically not SCE, because it doesn't teach you deployment, and that's one of the most important things to learn in the whole game. It skips it.
Yeah, I guess.
Because you put some guys near some objectives, and then you put half your army in the sky, and it just solves the problem for you.
It should teach you target priority, though. You should learn that, but you basically learn that playing the game no matter what.
You learn that with anybody.
But like Fire
and Stormcast, you're not ever deploying really, and so you're not learning that, and it's a big part of the game. And you're dropping something down and either blowing something up or getting charged, and then you hit this ceiling of armies that you just can't beat. Or somebody's playing a bunch of chaff because their Gloomspite gets. You can't beat that. And so you hit these walls, and then you go online and you're like, man, I was getting okay with Stormcast, and I just can't deal with 60 grots that give me minuses to hit. Like, what do I do?
Tells you you're bad.
And and everyone online is like, yeah, you just lose to that. Sorry, bro. Like, there's no getting good. There's just playing something else.
I don't know. If it's Facebook, they're just like, oh, yeah.
Right, if it's Facebook, they're like, well, what list are you playing?
Yeah, you should try running this thing instead. Yeah. I beat the Gloomspite Gits player at my store all the time.
Right, yeah, I can't stop winning against Gloomspite Gits and Flesh Eater Courts at my store. Like, guy.
I can't, yeah.
I simply can't stop winning against the most overpowered armies in the game with my B tier thing. Therefore, it couldn't be that the people at my store are choosing like fucking battle report,
as far as the eye can see,
like battle report tier faction lists. No, it's got to be that I'm amazing and everyone's terrible. Yeah.
Oh boy. I was worried at the beginning of this video, that we weren't getting spicy or hot takey enough, but I found that we got to that part now.
Yeah, we got there.
Yeah, we got there.
Yeah, for all those reasons, and it's hard to build a list as a new player, because you have 100 War Scrolls, and 99% of them are either really bad or strictly worse than something else, and
you haven't picked up that quality control yet.
And you can't just make a list that's like a take-all-comers best at everything list, because you don't have the points for that, because your guys are too expensive. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard for an advanced player to make a Stormcast list that they really feel properly good about, because it's a B-tier army and it doesn't really have like the best list ever in it that can deal with everything. And battalions are fun, and all their battalions are fucking garbo. So yeah, I don't think Stormcast is a good new player army, and I don't think Khorne is a new player army. It's too hard to play.
Weird, but they really are.
They're marketed for new players, and and their lore seems to be as well. And it looks like their models are marketed towards new painters, and for that they mostly succeed actually. Mm-hmm. But how you have to play them either is way too hard like Khorne, or kind of skips important things you should learn like SCE. Now, as Khorne, you could take the 3 Bloodthirster Battalion, and then they're fucking easy to play. So I think that's probably fine. Khorne is a better new player army, I think, than Stormcast. Because if an army is just too hard, well, then you'll play it a lot, and then you'll get good. Stormcast Eternal is GHB. People seem to want Sequitors, Evocators, and Ballista to go up. Why? They're B tier. They're middle-of-the-road viable.
We've already established why.
So...
The most Age of Sigmar experience I get is on Facebook, and that's why.
I think so. Like, point increases should not be for internal balance. That's what point decreases are for. If your army is not a problem, then nothing you have should go up for any reason, and that's it. If you're mad that people are playing Sequitors instead of Liberators, well then make Liberators not shit, because they are. Liberators are shit at 100, and they were shit at 100 last year. The last time a Liberator was worth 100 points for 5 was in Vanguard Wing. After that, they were overpriced. Especially now in 2nd edition. Right. Judicators are good, but they should go down. Like, Star Drake is good, but it should go down. The Drake Templars are like 450 points for some god. I have no idea. They don't even summon 200 points for free when you take them. What the fuck is with that? Everyone's like, yeah, well, Evocators at 200 are like way too good for what they cost. Like what, in a vacuum, floating in space? You know that the best Stormcast lists aren't even taking foot Evocators anymore. It's not that Evocators are too expensive at 200, it's that the Decimators should be 160. Because move 5 slow foot slogging dudes is like bad. You don't like, so all the other Paladins should be 160. Even Retributors now that they got nerfed. Same thing with all the other equivalents. Like, Stormcast have a whole bunch of units, but they don't have a wide variety of units. Because there's like 7 different War Scrolls that do the goddamn same thing. And one of them is well pointed, and none of the others are, and so they're just never taken. Stormcast Eternals need point changes for almost everything in their entire book. And so there should be like 2 pages in the GHB of just every single Stormcast thing changing points just about. Like Castellan's fine, Relictor's fine, Evocator's fine, Sequitor's fine, Ballista fine. Evocators on Dracoline seem a little expensive, but fine. They're fine, it's fine. You take the cookie cutter Stormcast units and lock them in place, and then, relatively speaking, make everything cost that much. And it might actually open up some variety in this. And it would give Stormcast like some bodies, a few more bodies on the table, and they really need that. Because they need help. If anything, Viable Tier needs a little bump. Not a crazy bump, but just a little, like, Khorne. Fix Blood Tithe, make Skull Reapers a little better, you know, just something here or there. Nurgle, 80% of their units go down a lot because they're all overcosted. Stormcast, same thing. Like Sylvaneth.
Exploding Sixes need to be unmodified.
Yeah, Exploding Sixes need to be like just little tiny things like that. I say little tiny when I'm also saying everything in their book should be 20% cheaper, but you know, its effect on the meta is going to be about that.
Yeah.
So they're in that camp. Sylvaneth. I don't know how much we exactly need to talk about this, because As soon as this port issue is fixed, we'll get a new book and everything will change. But they're viable. How they work right now is that they always choose who goes first, and they always choose to go first. And then they teleport to half of the objectives and set up anvils. And if you can punch through those anvils while navigating Wildwoods, then you win the game. And if you can't, then they win the game. And that's it. And we've got armies that do enough damage now on bases that can deal with Wildwoods that the castle walls will be sieged. And so here Sylvaneth sit. They're good. They're real good, and there's some cool builds and stuff. None of those are surviving. So what do we talk about? The new book? Who knows? Who the fuck knows? I say B. New book seems worse than old book, to be perfectly honest. But maybe I'm being an alarmist. Hold on. Am I recording still? Just making sure. I will not talk for half an hour and then look at this thing and be like, fuck. I would close my Patreon and jump out my window. I'm on the first floor. So I wouldn't die, but, you know.
But hey, you get your point across.
I'd get my point across. A 4-foot fall kind of, like that might kind of hurt, depending on what you land on.
We're getting old, you know. You could land awkward.
You get up slow.
Certainly break something.
Yeah. Like, it's only 4 feet. I won't die, but I'll get up slow. They'll know my point. Anyway, Sylvaneth, the new stuff came out. They're completely different now. No longer are they the masters of turn 1 always and carefully controlling drops and making sure you go first and teleporting anvils to all the objectives and being good at spellcasting. None of that anymore. They're no longer good at spellcasting. Teleporting anvils to objectives is no longer the greatest plan because you can't be sure you go first. In fact, you probably won't. And so it might not even be the strat to do that anymore. You can still create a bunch of Wildwoods. They're more like gnaw holes that you set up during the game more than like places you camp objectives with. Mm-hmm. And so it might not even be the greatest plan at all to be like, well, I'll just teleport to the objectives because Fyreslayers are going to appear there on their first turn. And a lot of people are going to run to them. And even if you do, then a Grizzlegore guy can actually kill 30 Dryads in one combat phase. Who knows what they'll look like? We'll see the whole book, and then we'll know. In the GHB, I hope they fix what I can only assume is a typo for Alariel to be at... They seem to have accidentally added 60 points to her instead of taken 60 away after making her worse and all your rules worse.
Right.
So she's 660 right now. I assume it's just a clerical error and they'll fix it and she'll be down to 540.
Where she belongs.
Yeah, where she basically belongs. I mean, at 540, she's only like 100 points more than a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, who can summon just about the same amount of stuff that she can and is way better in combat.
And strikes first
and has
twice.
And has a way better spell and strikes first twice and all the rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I assume they'll fix that. Tree Lords should still be less expensive. They brought them down to 200. And they've only been going down since they came out, but they should be even yet cheaper because they don't have a lot of attacks, and they're slow as fuck. And that's just about like a description of the army. It doesn't have a lot of attacks, and it's slow as fuck. They have a lot of teleports, but they're all limited and easy to body block out. Nothing flies, everything's slow. They got cool combos now, but yeah, there's no way the points are going to change in the GHB because the book isn't even out yet. It's probably going to get... It might even come out at the same time as the GHB. So, yikes. Yikes. I mean, yeah. Scythe Kurnoth can do some cool damage now with a command ability and things. Like, that's nice.
And they're always in range of it because they...
And they're always in range of it, and that's, like, I think their best trick. But, boy, can a lot of armies do a lot of damage and teleport.
You remember, like, back in First Ed and Daughters of Cain were about to come out and Sam was holding off and pulling the trigger?
And he's like... And we told him, dude, DOK, it's getting nerfed. They're changing points every 6 months. And then a calendar year later, nothing has changed. DOK's still just blasting full cylinders. And Sylvaneth is the one to get the...
He even had a great hobby idea. And Sylvaneth is the one to just get shit canned so hard. Oh, man.
I mean, I keep qualifying this. The book could come out and we could have an epiphany and people could play. But as it seems right now, this is the only 2nd edition battle tome that came out and straight nerfed an army.
To be fair,
that wasn't problematically amazing. It was miserable to play against, and everyone hated it. But that's no reason to make an army worse. It's a reason to make an army different. Right now, it's got a really strong, unique plan that is miserable to play against, and either just about auto beats someone or loses to it, and there's nothing you can do. Mm-hmm. So there be, because whoever you play against, that's just going to determine how well you do. Also, you have to bring 2 armies worth of luggage to play your 1 army, because you have 9 wildwoods. And ain't nobody got time for that when plane flights are involved.
It's not even just 9 wildwoods. You got 9 wildwoods and like another 30 dryads.
Yeah, and a summoning board.
And a summoning board besides, so like some Kurnoth, and usually you're going to summon the scythe, but every now and then you want the bow ones.
Yeah,
Just, fuck it. No, thank you.
Now we have Nighthaunt. Many people would be surprised that they're this high. But it's just that they're worse than Legions of Nagash. It's not that they're bad.
See, and that's how I feel about it. I wouldn't put them worse than where you have them.
Yeah.
I think the problem I see with them, and it's not just you would play Legions of Nagash instead. The way the army fundamentally plays out of the book, like the Nighthaunt book, if you're like a competitive player and you're just not like in love with like spoopy ghosts, you're just gonna play like IDK or something else. You know, like you're just gonna play some other alpha fast fly army. Mm-hmm. You know, in terms of like if you love the spoopy ghosts aesthetic, you're gonna play Legions of Nagash.
Right.
Like, it's not entirely the army's fault. I think they actually have some really good builds. It's just the good builds. It's opposite day of Legions of Nagash. You don't take any of their heroes. You only take the ones you're forced to. Like you take a
right.
Like you don't take any of their named heroes or any of their interesting heroes. You take like their most basic shit.
Yeah, the broken guy that's not even on the app with the special teleporty thing.
Yeah,
with Nightmare Lantern or Mortality Glass, whichever the fuck one it is. I don't know.
Mortality Glass. Yeah. You don't even like. You don't
maybe Reikenor, I think.
Reigenor's sweet. He looks awesome.
But probably just the Knight of Shrouds because his compatibility is better.
Well, that's the thing, is like the Knight of Shrouds on the mount is the one I'm talking. You take him.
You play that battalion that lets you beginning of combat, so you got activation wars, and double pile in immediately, or you can fight first and then you can activate later if you roll a natural 10 up to charge.
Well,
there's a battalion,
so it's a 9.
Yeah, there's a battalion for a 9. And then you re-roll every charge every game with your 30 Grimghast Reapers.
Yeah,
and your clouds of other stuff. Or Blade Geists.
Yeah. I like Blade Geists a great deal.
Like they're good too, and that's your game plan. You play differently than it seems the army wants you to play, or the book does, or most people that I've seen play Nighthaunt play.
Yeah.
You go all in on that. You basically play Nighthaunt like it's almost like a Beastclaw Raiders army, except with hordes.
Yeah.
Where you're just trying to get some really high charge number and re-rolling it all the time with like OP dudes. Yeah. And if you don't roll those, well, that sucks for you. But if you do, then you can actually hang with some of the big boys, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think Nighthaunt played optimally is better than Legions of Nagash against some of the broken stuff, if you get really lucky.
You're forcing luck too with all the rerolls.
You are.
You're farming. You're probably taking
a 9 up with a reroll is still less than 50, I think.
You're still taking you're taking Aether Quartz Brooch to like freaking farm command points.
Yeah.
You also run like 120 bodies, which is the other part of this.
And you're immune to Rend, so all that Rend 2 and Rend 1 stuff that your opponent's paying for is just wasted, which is nice. Yeah, it's nice to have your opponent waste points.
And again, you're an army with 120 bodies.
Right.
So you're just because it's just all the Grimghast, all the Blade guys. You have you're just
and they play like flying, deep striking Iron Jaw Beastclaw Raiders. Is how you play them.
Which is pretty cool. And so again,
that is sweet.
Viable, good. They have a chance at the top tables. I think they can go all the way to the podium. But like,
well, Reliant did really good with them.
He did good, and he was on. I don't remember his exact list, but he was doing some.
I think he was on that battalion. I'm not sure though.
I know Tom Lyons had like a really cool thing. He was theory crafting with like actually running hex raids, but he's betting on them going down to make it even work.
He's betting on them going down because they're not good right now, even in.
So he's like trading in future stocks, you know. Yeah. So.
And he's not opening the box, and it can also make Black Knights, so he can sell it to some LON player who knows what he's doing. Yeah,
he can sell it to me for my 60 Black Knights list. Perfect. That's the one thing.
Get some more katanas, and we're good. Yeah. And if you're buying some of their like story boxes, your units come in bizarro sizes for some reason, which is annoying. And you're going to be like, I have 3 Grimghast Reapers, and people are going to be like, yeah, but they come in 5s. And you're like, well, why didn't they come in 5s? And like, because it's stupid. I don't know. It's for narrative. And like, well, why is narrative not compatible with the rest of the whole fucking game then? It could have been really easily. And then more people would have wanted it. So yeah, that's Night Hunt. Where do the points, where should they go? Your massively overpriced Fragile Heroes should all go down. That's for fucking sure. The Doot Man.
Don't touch Grimghast Reapers. I know everyone's really mad about them 1 year ago, but please stop.
Everyone was mad about them a year ago, but I'm sorry. The world we live in, they're fine.
Yeah, like cut that shit out.
If you really want to make Black Knights 100, I'm not going to argue with you. I think they're good right now, but go ahead. Go the fuck ahead. A lot of people suggested it.
60 point, or my 60 Black Knight list can live.
Yeah. If the first preview leak I see from GHB is Nagash going up, I'll know that GW has no idea what it's doing. And that the GHB will be a disappointment. That's my litmus test.
Or they wrote the balancing like a year ago.
Even if they did, they don't know what they're doing. Because he wasn't the reason why LON was good.
Right.
Like, truly. So, you know, I guess we'll see about that. But for Night Hunt, like, Doot King should go down. He's 200 points. And what he does is, if you roll a 5 up, you steal someone's command point. The rest of his war scroll is fucking blank. So you're paying 200 points for that. So unless you're allergic to rolling below a 5 every single time, he is a trap. And so he should go down. Sad Lady should go down. All your heroes that are obviously bad should go down, including the Black Coach.
I'm still salty the Black Coach isn't terrain.
It should have been terrain that moves around.
Terrain that's just like haunting
and cast spells and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have an attack profile, but it haunts about the board and stuff and cast spells. That would have been so sweet. And totally I can't. I'm getting triggered.
Alright, I lost the audio for Order Draconis, but quick recap. They used to be really good. Probably the premier Alpha Strike army in the game, although no one played them. And then Doppelganger Cloak got nerfed to be once per game, which they leaned heavily upon. And a whole bunch of way better armies came out. So they dropped down because they don't have a great backup plan besides a good Alpha Strike with flying dragons, with good breath weapons. Dragon Blades, their troops are real bad, although they have decent move, and they're really elite. So they can be good, but they have polarizing matchups, and they're flawed. What do I hope for in GHB? I think Dragon Blades could afford to be 120, that's fine. But really, who knows what's going to happen with stuff like Order Draconis and Phoenix Temple, where they have 2, possibly 3 units total in the whole thing. And they're just like very obviously shattered factions that don't have much to them. Some of their units are good in mixed order. But here they sit. Also, isn't it interesting that they nerfed Doppelganger Cloak because it made combat uninteractive and not fun at all? And then they made Grizzlegore. Interesting.
Well, their Phoenixes are blazing fast. So on
their Phoenixes are blazing fast, but
Places of Arcane Power was they're theirs to lose, right? So they
yeah, but a lot of armies are really good at that. Marathi is probably more immune than they are
now.
Well, even before, like.
Well, yeah, true. I just mean the meta. Has figured out they want to play.
Yeah, I mean Phoenix Temple. It's like you get a lot of attacks because your guys have 2-inch reach and they're on 25 mil bases, but you don't actually do that much damage as an army. And you're very durable, but not as durable as other stuff.
Well, they've got Swordmaster profiles, but they don't have any tricks.
Yeah.
No tricks.
And no tricks. And you don't have enough ally points to really solve all your problems.
Damages. Yeah. There's no like mortal wounds, like in any sense. Like it's
the only wizards you can afford aren't very good, actually. Like maybe a lore master or an archmage or a knight incanter or something. It's okay. You can't really fit enough wizards in there to make your phoenixes like truly invincible. They're basically mixed. They're basically mixed order, and as mixed order, I don't even have mixed anything on this list because all the lists are so different that how could you even tier it? What do you call mixed order? Is it Tom Lyon's Dwarf Soup, or is it Phoenix Temple with different battle line and a whole bunch of wizards? Those go in different tiers. And so they just don't even go on a tier list.
Right.
And so now we have Chorfs, another army that almost nobody plays, but a few play locally. And I played against Rob at Epticon and stuff, and they can be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Well, they can be pretty good because they can ally in a Vermin Lord with the stupid warp lightning vortex, and so you can do that.
But not everybody does that. Is that the best? Probably, but who knows? They're reasonably durable. They have a very underrated unit that's really cool in the Kadai Fireborn. Those guys are sweet.
Constantly underrated.
The whole army is underrated, and nobody knows what the fuck any of their stuff does. And there's a lot of ranged, which people find hard to play against. And so they're pretty good. But every game is really a struggle.
It's funny because you just described the next army too.
Yeah, that's probably true.
The Seraphon is you have to play really well. The army.
Your war scrolls are just so old, man.
They're so bad.
Your models are old, your war scrolls are old, and they were flawed when they first came out, and half of them got changed a lot. Your summoning
is insanely good.
Yeah, if anybody is competing with Slaanesh for best summoning, it's Seraphon. You can churn shit out so fast.
2-3 units a turn when it matters. It's so strong.
Yeah, and their teleports are the best in the game, bar none.
Every Seraphon game I watch and I hear described to me, it just sounds like they steal every win every time. Like they're always kind of like hanging on the losing side of every game, and they just steal it at the last minute.
Yeah, you have excellent shenanigans and absolutely nothing else, and this brings you all the way up from F into C, because that's how important shenanigans are. Oh yeah, what do I hope for GHB for Chorfs? Well, they're not in the GHB, they're Forge World, so that nothing is changing with them. For Seraphon, man, points. So much needs to be updated and fixed with this army, dude. They need a new book so bad.
They need a new book.
Yeah. They're better than Beastclaw and everything, but Beastclaw could be fixed with points. Seraphon almost can't.
They could be triaged with points.
Yeah.
You can strap some band-aids on them
with
some points.
If you're playing Beastclaw and you're just allowed to bring a 2,700 point army, well then you're fine. But I tried a little bit of that. I did some playtesting with 2,500 points of Beastclaw against real armies. And it started to become kind of a game when I was playing with 24 up.
Yeah, so imagine if you were just Flesh Eater Courts, except you also had busted ass allegiance abilities.
Well, their 2,000 points are really good, but then also they're playing up. They got the double whammy.
Right.
But anyway, so Seraphon, dude, they just need a book so fucking bad. And a lot of their war scrolls are flawed in critical ways that points kind of can't fix unless you just make everything dirt fucking cheap. And I think those poor bastards have painted enough skinks as it is, so just forcing them to play more models and a bigger summoning board isn't necessarily the answer. Right. Give them a fucking book, man. And their lore needs to be fixed, because their lore was trash, because they didn't know what they were going to do with AoS yet when they wrote it. And the Malign Portents short stories are way kino. So I look forward to a book for that reason as well. Speaking of looking forward to a book, we're going to be saying that a lot in C and below. It's Free Peoples. They got better from the meta. Turns out, when you have stuff that's so overpowered in combat that you can't even participate in that phase, even armies that weren't very good but had shooting suddenly got better. And here we are with Free People. They have unit support tricks that kind of get around some of the activation wars by shooting during the charge phase sometimes. And their ranged is pretty good. Not excellent, but pretty good. It's like 260 or something for a Griffin. That's pretty aggressive. That's good.
They have some efficient... The problem is that they're... I know, like, saying Fire Slayers is slow is like the hot take right now.
Free Peoples are fucking slow. Your ranged units used to only get the full amount of shots if they haven't moved. Now it's just if they're outside of melee combat. So you can move your ranged units now, although they have to kind of stay in formation, so they're like double slow for that reason.
Right.
Although their command ability still forces you to stand still in every phase, even pile-in. And all their cavalry is poop, and not worth taking at all. Every single cavalry option they have, the war scroll is so bad that they've lowered the points every single GHB, and nobody takes them still because they're just still so bad.
Yeah, but greatsword users just look so good.
The greatsword users look so awesome, but they're just way expensive. I think they should be 120.
They're a good unit though. They're good.
They're not bad. They're just too expensive. There's a difference. Yeah. Put them at 120 and let the guys play with the cool looking dudes. Come on.
I heard someone was in my stream actually the other day talking about they're working on their Free People's Army, and they're like just getting into Age of Sigmar, and I wish I could remember their name, but it's all Moon Ruins when your chat's just spamming past you and you're streaming.
I just called it yellow name. Oh yeah, blue name, that's a good one. Or a red name. Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they were talking about their idea is to have like cowboys and samurai, basically.
Oh, what a wonderful idea. Yeah,
for all their like handgunners and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that army deserves to be played. You know, like
so
when you have a great theme,
it just fixes everything when you have a great theme. Yeah.
Yeah. Free Peoples they're one of those things we want to see, like normal dudes with massive cod pieces and feathers in their cap fighting the darkness. I think
it's just a charming theme. Is mere men. Mortals who train, and they're fighting against crazy bullshit that's not fair, and it's demons, and they're just like, yeah, I'm probably gonna die, but if I'm going out, I'm gonna speak the kings, like...
Right. Yeah,
well, so old boy...
How do you give these guys a book? Because they're just like these...
Easy. Weird... They're the main troops of all of the Free City Army.
Okay.
That's the book.
Yeah, we need a Free People and Friends book.
Yeah. And then the box set writes itself. It's not just for grognards, like it's for all the old dudes. And it's a classic competition between men with feathers in their caps, wiggly greatswords over their shoulders, and giant red and white cod pieces, versus the classic Chaos Warrior Rune Shield Barbarians, and Archeon the not bad War Scroll anymore. And
so you have great ideas. I feel like...
Wouldn't it be great if all of these war bands we have been seeing of the Bird Boys and like the crazy dudes, those are just the actual units you play in STD, and they're just releasing them through Warcry.
Ultimate sculpts and stuff like that.
Wouldn't that be sick?
It'd be so sweet. You know, you have these great ideas. You should like go work for Games Workshop or something.
I tried to, but I didn't make it through the "Do you have a work visa" for Britain phase of it, and I got thrown into the trash. They really want to hire local, and that's it. Even for stuff that doesn't have to be local and can be distanced, they want to hire local always within the EU.
Well, it makes sense.
And so I got declined on all that.
So move to EU first.
I applied for their rules writer position, and I'm pretty goddamn good with rules of other games and Magic and all that, and this as well. But yeah,
you'd have to move first to gamble on possibly getting a job there.
Yeah, and work visas take a while to get. It's not as bad as in America where they actually don't want you to have them, but that's another discussion. Anyway, Free Peoples, all of their cavalry sucks, all their mounted horseback guys suck, and they don't suck because they're expensive, although they are too expensive, but because the war scrolls are bad. And so in GHB, I hope all that shit goes down. Great Sorters should go down to 120, because I think they should be playable, because they're the most cool-looking unit in your whole army. amongst a lot of, honestly, older sculpts, so it'd be nice to have some cool stuff. And I hope they get turned into Free City, like official adopted Free City books and stuff. That'd be cool.
Right.
KO. KO is up to C as well for a similar meta reason. They tend to do really well in Japan. The Japanese meta loves KO. It is not surprising.
Why is this not surprising?
It's Skyship Cogfop dwarves with guns and pressure suits.
Fair enough. It's weird because it's like they perform better against better armies and worse against jank.
They're like Nighthaunt. Yeah, that's a real thing. That's a real concept in many metagames. I can talk about, Magic as well. There are decks in Magic that are hyper-tuned to beat the best stuff, but if you lose, now you're in the jungle, and you have a real high chance of losing to random jank, because your whole deck is Silver Bullets. So that's a real thing in Magic, and it's a real thing in Age of Sigmar. You have armies like Legions and Nagash that just grinds bad armies into dust. KO does better against good armies and struggles against some of the lesser armies. It's got bad matchups. I mean, the flawed tier is for people that are flawed. You have trouble in random stuff, and that's KO. Also, a proper KO list built up to like being good enough to be in this tier and stuff looks way different than how you're supposed to play it, and probably how you will play it when the book comes out. And so a lot of people don't want to invest in that. Do you want to play 120 Arcanaut Company and a unit of 20 Thunderers or whatever with a chemist near each of them when the book is going to come out, and then it's going to be 2 ships again, except with good rules? And you're going to sell like 60 Arcanaut Company because they're going to nerf the triple light Skyhook in there, and it just has to be one of each, and then Arcanauts are going to actually suck. I think people just kind of don't want to do that, and they're not wrong not to want it.
GHB?
Yeah, KO GHB, they need a new book, so they should have that, but Aether Chemist should go back down to where it used to be. All the ships should be 100 points cheaper, or give them good war scrolls instead of bad ones, because currently they have bad ones with bad rules. And they're fragile as fuck for being made out of fucking pig iron. And they don't have melee attacks. And they should. I mean...
anything. They don't need melee attacks.
Skywardens shouldn't cost the same as Engine Riggers, because they're strictly worse. And it's a shame when 2 units, there's a clear better, and they're the same cost. Honestly, like, the KO book just needs to happen, and then they need to give like Engine Riggers and Skywardens a proper amount of durability, so that they're not just the glassiest of glass cannons. Like, something in the army has to be durable, and nothing is. And these are dwarves in power armor. There should be shit that you play in this army that's durable, and it just isn't the case. The ships should be garrisonable, so that your Arcanaut can shoot out of them. Nobody should be able to hitch a ride along, so you can't bring too many guys. That just shouldn't be a rule at all. I know it thematically makes sense, but if it's at all worth doing, then it's going to be exploitative, and that's not okay. When a ship blows up, you should remove it first, and then put the guys underneath it, so that they all don't die when a ship dies and it's surrounded by melee troops. Yeah, like Engine Riggers and Skywardens and stuff should have like 3 up saves and 4 wounds each or something. Like, make them more Sargard. It looks like an army that's hard as nails, and it's actually the most fragile army in the game.
I think actually doing like 2 wounds a model on like some of their stuff, and like kind of what they do with Fire Slayers, where they went a little bit more elite. I think you could do that with KO, because
you can easily explain it as part of their pressure suits and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessarily power armor, but some of their heroes have actual power armor. Brock Grungson, aka Cave Johnson from Portal 2.
Right.
He's got an exoskeleton.
We're not sure what's in that stuff, but doesn't like the human skeleton.
Yeah. So yeah, KO, they need help. Their war scrolls have been mostly just nerfed and changed. It needs a complete reimagining from the ground up. Clown Car should never be a thing, but neither should, 100 dwarves just shooting stuff.
If this were a tier list of models, they would be on S tier along with like IDK and.
To me, they can't be an S because the balloons look dumb. They'd be one down.
Oh, okay, so AA.
They'd be one down. They'd be double A. Bone Splitters, they're good. They're still good. Cunninruck is still good. You have way fewer bodies than you'd like anymore. But they're still playable. Like, what's it?
We played against the Tobins, and they did it pretty well.
Yeah, and at Adepticon, I think Byron Ord was playing them, and he did pretty well. Like, it's still, you're still able to do pretty well.
He won Best Destruction with Bone Splitters.
Right, but I don't know how good that exact fact is. Not to.
Oh no, I mean he was still like, I think he was like 4-1. I think he was still 4-1.
Okay, so that's fine. Yeah.
Like he was still like he like took one L somewhere, but you know, like Flesh Eater Courts or something. I don't know. Probably not Flesh Eater Courts. Skaven. He drew into Skaven and they just like outshoot you.
Yeah, if anyone wants to quibble with anything in this list, I think if somebody was really adamant about Bone Splitters being B, I'd be like, fine, all right. Yeah, they're just very often not played very much. That's all.
They actually have decent spells too. They can
Savage Magic.
Yeah, Savage Magic. Yeah, they're pretty good in terms of what they do. They're good at it. It's just they're missing something.
But yeah, Bone Splitters obviously need a book, just like Iron Jaws, just like Gutbusters, just like Beastclaw Raiders, just like every single Destruction faction, except Gloomspite, which only needs an FAQ here or there, and a lot of points decreases. What a year of destruction we've had so far. Yeah, we talked about Phoenix Temple, so it's fine. Now we have Luke Stone, I mean Scourge Privateers. Originally, I just wrote Luke Stone as a meme because nobody else plays the army, like at all.
Right.
They're much better than people think they are. People think they're F. They're not. He's gone 4-1. You know, not a lot, and nobody plays it. But
so he's getting that phantom win from inexperienced players.
Yeah, pretty much, and it's got a lot of ranged, which is good, and a lot of buffs. So it's way better than people think it is, but it's not like amazing. He says it is online because it's bravado. You want to do that,
of course.
You know,
I'm a bad guy on the internet. I mean,
right.
Like one of the nicest people ever.
And so this is where they sit. Maybe they're ahead of some of this other stuff in C. I don't know. Once it gets to C tier, this tier is big, and a lot of these C tier armies, like, almost no one plays. Chaos Dwarves, Order Draconis, honestly, Bone Splitters, Phoenix Temple, SP, Free People. Nobody plays any of these, so it's hard to say.
It's also pretty telling of like which armies need new tomes or work.
Yeah. Then we have D, which is Hospitalized. These are the factions that, if we're talking statistics, like mid 30% or below for win rates, it is considered a great success and a triumph and an achievement to go 3-2. Sometimes you're able to do it, but it is a complete statistical anomaly to do so.
Andrew Tolstead was on like table 5 or something like that day 1 with his Iron Jaws. He had two wins, and he is a very skilled player. He's a very skilled pilot. He also is like one of the better hobbyists I directly know. Yeah. And he's a very good chess player and brought a lot of that into it. In the same way that I brought a lot of magic stuff into AoS, he brought a lot of chess stuff into it. He's an analytical player. He's got good strategy and good tactics. And he has good decision making. And he plays very well and tightly. And he realizes and recognizes his mistakes and tries to improve upon them. And the best he can possibly do is almost beating some people and then ending up with 2 wins. Or maybe 3. And that's what this tier is about. A lot of people say this online and they're like, well, really, you know, with a skilled general, any army can win. And that's complete bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. But people tend to way overvalue how important being a good general and having skill in the game is. You want it to be
way
a lot more
undervalue
important than what it
other
is.
stuff. Well, you want it to be important.
You want it to be like 50% of winning games is like your skill as a general, and it's not.
Look, if you want player skill to be more important, then decrease the bullshit randomness everywhere.
Yeah,
like if that's really what you really want
it's not.
Yeah, it's not what you want. But if really what you want is like player skill to trump how good your army is, then you remove the double turn and you remove all these random like dice rolls and stuff, and it becomes chess. And it's just, I know it's a slippery slope, but you know, there's too much randomness in the game, and armies are too unbalanced next to each other for player skill to make up enough to have that big of an effect. It does have an effect. It's important. D and below, we finally get to the tier where it actually doesn't matter how good you are, you can't really do well with these armies. You hit the cap. If you've played against the army before and you know all the battle plans, and you're a good player just in general, and you think through your decisions well, and you make the right decisions, you will get crushed by everyone. And the only way you go 3-2 generally is if you get really lucky. And that's D and below. There's exceptional players like Tolsted who every other tournament go 3-2 and 2-3. There's people who are actually quite good that try Wanderers and get like one win. Like it's just you don't get a good game in. You're not playing the game.
It's weird because with this community, it's like they're apprehensive to say that certain armies are bad. I don't understand that.
Well, they don't want to be mean. The community is really nice. To a fault.
Not just that, like there's like some competitive players out there, and they're like, oh, any army's good if you just like put in the time and play. And I'm like, well, then why aren't you playing any army? I see that you happen.
Well, then why aren't you playing? Why aren't you playing Slaves to Darkness, dude? Why aren't you on Wanderers? If any army can be good.
In the last calendar year, you've only played like the top 3 armies. Oh.
And you changed armies 3 times. So what's the whole story here? You know,
we're apprehensive in this game to admit that like something is bad when it is. Dispossessed isn't good right now, but there's still people out there like, oh yeah, if you're really good with it and you play like the battle plan really well, you can beat anybody. No, you can't. Don't lie to them.
You can't. In any one game, like I guess anything can happen.
Yeah, sure. It's the any given Sunday of football.
Sure.
Like, yeah, on any given Sunday, Cleveland Browns from 2 years ago may have been able to beat the New England Patriots, but come on, are you really saying that they're as good as?
You're kind of selling people on a lottery ticket at that point.
Yeah,
it's almost a diversionary tactic to talk about if it's even remotely possible. That's not what we're talking about.
I wonder if the joke is that like good players tell people that they can play bad armies
just so they'll have some easy wins now and again.
So they have some easy wins. You know, it's like the equivalent of catching a bye because you're a pro player. You know, in Magic.
As long as they mention one sentence, then their suggestions become fine, and that's they suck right now, but they haven't gotten an update for a while and they're due for one, and it could change everything, and that's completely true. So if somebody's like, I want to play Gutbusters, and you're like, well, they're not very good right now, but they're due for a book, so maybe in the future they'll be good. But right now, really not so much. Because it happened with Flesh Eater Courts.
Yeah,
if you remember, Flesh Eater Courts was tied with Beastclaw Raiders. People argued about this. People argued about this in 2017. Which was the worst army in the whole game that had a Battle Tome? Was it Flesh Eater, or was it Beastclaw? And people had arguments, and it was Beastclaw at the time, by the way.
Going into AoS 2, though, they were climbing. As soon as they were playing, their whole thing was like they're playing with 2,500 points now.
Yeah,
and they could kind of win.
Yeah, because when GHB18 came out and they got summoning, when the summoning system changed and all their summoning became quote unquote free, they got a huge bump, and they were much better than people thought they were even at the time. And then they got a new book, and now they're the best army in the game.
So this goes back to
so it can happen it can happen to you. You could pick up Iron Jaws today, and even though they suck, they could get a book next month. And now everybody wants to nerf IJ, and they're calling it the no skill easy win army, just like they're doing with FEC. So if you pick up a shit tier army and it gets good, don't feel bad. You've earned this. This is justice.
Well, that's the thing is like get on it early, dude.
Yeah.
I guess in the infinites of the universe eventually, right? If you stick with an army.
Eventually it will happen to everybody. You have to know that people said Gutbusters were getting a book pretty soon, since the year of our Lord 2016. So, I mean...
it's a long wait
you
for
gotta,
a train.
honestly, you're gonna have to full disclosure with your lazy shit.
I don't know.
So Ironjaws.
Yeah.
They're indeed...
Ironjaws.
What you do is win about 38% of the time. Sometimes you can do okay, but it's really like statistically aberrant for that to happen. And you're the army that the most people play and the most people do the poorest with. A lot of people play Ironjaws and they're all getting trashed.
They're playing, this is the play for the double the army.jpg.
That's because it's your only... You have to win every priority. You're one of the armies that needs the priority system because they have to win all of them. But it shows the error of the priority system in that it's just a 50-50, so you can't win them at all, and you'll get crushed anyway.
Well, isn't it a sub-50 because of the way that tiebreakers work?
If one happens, then it's more likely for the player who took the double turn to get the one after the next, which is kind of BS as well, but whatever. Ironjaws, they don't shoot. They don't really cast spells. They only combat. And they do combat worse than almost every other army from B up. They have one turn where they have a bunch of extra attacks, which is strong. It loses to Chaff. And they have to play in a Death Star formation. And all of this is bad for objectives. And their buffs fall off at end of turn instead of next hero phase. And all their shit's random and sucks. What do they do? What do you do against an always strikes first Ghoul King? It actually solos your whole army. You can't do any damage to it at all. It just kills everything. You have no recourse. And you have battle plans that you suck at. You have a limited amount of strengths that you're giving up things to be able to do. You ignore large phases of the game. And you auto-lose to a whole bunch of stuff that is very common. Like having Chaff. Striking first sometimes. Being able to... Needing to be in a bunch of places at once. Your own abilities when they should just work, but instead they only work on 6s, or instead they only work sometimes, or instead they only work on your own turn. And you're kind of elite. You have a good unbinder, though. That's nice. But yeah, it's no good. What do I hope in GHB? I don't know, that they get good battle traits instead of really bad ones. That a lot of their randomness stops being... But, like, all this stuff is like a book. They need a book. If it's just points, honestly, a whole bunch of their stuff should go down. But how cheap can you make Gorgrunta? How cheap can you make Ardboys before you're just playing 120 of them, right? So, I don't know, man.
That's the opposite of what I want to see happen to this game overall. Which is if the solution... If
the War Scroll is so bad that it's just spamming stuff until you finally just have an overwhelming amount of cheap bodies that suck, so that, like, now they're good. That's lazy.
Let's not
give them good rules instead. Yeah, let's not have.
That's why Fire Slayers. I'm so happy that that's there because it proves that they can go the opposite direction.
Yeah, they're capable of that. Yeah.
They're capable of making a competitive, good army that is actually elite. The best way to play it is in 120 of something. You know.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Gorgruntas are pretty well costed. Everything else could get cheaper. Gordrak is way overpriced. A unique named hero is a downside, not an upside, even with the special rules it gets in almost all situations. There are a few exceptions in the game, but they are exceptions. Why? Because it means almost every unique character is fucking fragile, because he can't be ethereal. And Gordrak can't score in some battle plans, because he doesn't have an artifact, even though his War Scroll details his 2 named artifacts he's holding. Speaking of rules I wish changed in GHB, they should let named artifacts on your War Scroll count as artifacts. Because basically it only helps Ironjaws and basically nobody else, so what's the harm? You might as well have a little realism here, you know? They really just need good rules and a redesign for what they're doing in a book. And points almost can't solve it because they don't do anything. They just fight. And
just fighting isn't good enough anymore.
Daughters of Cain do infinite damage. If Ironjaws did infinite damage, they would still be worse than Daughters. So it can't just be points go down. A lot of people do basically infinite damage. Infinite durability is harder to deal with than infinite damage. Infinite damage you can feed chaff, and then the infinite damage armies need to figure out ways around the chaff. This is why daughters use Kinnerai, and this is why. Anyway, Gut Bustas. Speaking of needing a book, these guys have like a low 30s win rate. Their claim to fame is being strictly better than Beastclaw Raiders, and that's about it. They have a decent wound density, and they have access to a 60-man unit of Battleshock immune Grots, although it's not cheap. The Grots are, but the 160-point hero isn't, who you need to keep alive, so he needs to babysit them. Blocks of 12 Ogres is good. They do 2 damage a hit, which is nice, and they're rerolling 1s to hit. And they have 48 wounds in a block of 12, which is good. But they're all kind of slow, and they have no tricks at all, and they're bad at casting spells, and they don't have spell lores, and they don't have allegiance abilities. Almost every unit they have is way expensive. And they have a Frostlord on Stonehorn with Ethereal because you're going GA because they don't have battle traits. So you might as well just go GA, I guess. And he benefits from Cauldrons. So a Gutbusters army is a Frostlord on Stonehorn with Ethereal, 2 Butchers, and then just a bunch of random normal Ogres. And maybe some Grots if you want to do that. And maybe a Tyrant if you're playing with Grots or 12-man units of Ogres to make them Battleshock immune. And that's that. Most people who play Gutbusters just kind of play it for fun and don't bring it to tournaments, because they know. Strictly better than Beastclaw isn't worth actually bringing to tournaments. Sad to say. You know.
It's a low bar.
They're waiting and they're hoping and they're just wishing for this stuff to get good. What do I hope for in GHB? How about battle traits? Maybe this year in the GHB that they could easily put them in. They could have in the first one and the second one and the third one and now this one. But yeah, battle traits would be nice, and the point costs on everything except basic Ogre should probably go down. Including Butcher. Like, he should be 120. If his buff stays random, 120. Tyrant should go down. Man-Eaters are too expensive. Iron Guts are too expensive. Lead Belchers are too expensive. Basic Ogre could even just be 100 with no Massive Regiment discount, so it's just 1, 2, 3, 400 for 3, 6, 9, 12. Firebelly should get rolled in to the unit and given a new spell, because the spell is poop, but the model is great. Yeah, their points just need to go down 20 or 40 on about everything. Or get a book with rules. Like, it's okay to pay 160, 180 for a unit of 3 guys, but they should be worth it, and they are not. And for the love of fuck, have the buff just be you choose. Instead of roll a die, why does a Hag Queen cost 60 and the buff automatically works and it gives reroll all failed wounds and battle shock immunity? And then a Butcher, you roll a die and something randomly fucking happens. I'm mad. Anyway, he's a spellcaster, that's why, but whatever. Moving on.
Alright. Darkling Covens?
Darkling Covens. This is the one where on paper it seems like they could be good, but I played against them twice now in real life, and I no longer consider that to be the case. But apparently some people play them and they say they're doing well. The stats don't necessarily reflect that. They're hospitalized. Executioners should be natural 6s to hit. This would improve them greatly. Their dragon should be not a piece of crap, but that's a war scroll thing, not a points cost thing. And really, they just need a book, and to be a proper faction, they're just a tiny sub-faction thing. Well, they're not actually that tiny. They have a decent amount of units, actually.
They're not going to get a book.
No, they're not. They're not even in the main website any longer as Darkling Covens. They're just lumped in with all elves, so they're going to be souped.
Yeah.
Whether it happened in the GHB or in a book later, who knows, but that's probably what's going to happen. They're just kind of like good at everything melee troops with 1 wound. Executioners do a decent amount of mortal wounds, and they're pretty good. Your ranged isn't very good. Your heroes are like strong spellcasters, kind of, but you don't have any spell lores to take advantage of that. You have a centerpiece dragon with a 5-up save and an awful spell, and who's basically a worse spellcaster than your foot ones. Has some tricks to pull and some things to do, but at the end of the day, you charge them and kill them. What do I hope for in GHB? I guess better allegiance abilities and make natural 6s for executioners. And rewrite the war scroll for a sorceress on Black Dragon, because that thing is just an incredibly fragile, shitty dragon with a terrible breath weapon and a bad spell. Just everything's wrong with it. It's so disappointing.
They have Hydras too.
No, those are part of SP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and those Hydras are shit. Order Serpentis, I don't know anything about them. Nobody else does either, but I talked to somebody online about them. And they're kind of in a similar spot with SP, although I suspect a little worse.
They're worse than, like, Order Draconis, and they're trying to do the Order Draconis thing, and that's, like, their thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody ever plays them, ever.
Cold One Riders look sweet.
Actually, that's not true. I talked to 2 people who do. Some people responded to my posts saying that their friend plays them, and sometimes they've gone 4-1 and stuff like that. So perhaps they're not D. Maybe they're C, like Luke Stone. I'll concede that. If someone argues really hard that Order Serpentis is actually C instead of D, like, okay, I yield. That's fine. But it doesn't really change that they really do need a book, and the same things with Darkling Covens and all the other ones.
That's the thing, is, like, Darkling Covens, Order Serpentis, and Scourge Privateers can probably be souped. You know, like
maybe they are in the GHB.
They're all they're all the hangers on of, like, what Dark Elves used to be.
Right.
And so,
and maybe they're souped up in GHB19. Who knows? Maybe they'll finally take the allegiance abilities that they put in there remotely seriously, which they have surely not so far.
Well, the interns wrote those ones.
Clearly. Have you read the STD ones?
No.
So what do I hope change? I hope they become a real boy like Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with a lot of them. Beastclaw Raiders, what can I say? They're real bad. So yes, it is. Beastclaw Raiders are the worst statistical army that has a battle tome, and worse than many armies that don't. If you're a very good player who gets very lucky and plays against opponents who make mistakes, you can go 3-2, and that's about the best you can do. There was one person in AoS 2 who went 4-1 at a tournament big enough to supply stats for, and nobody went 5-0. The next most likely outcome was 1 win, which the most people got. So if you take them to a tournament, you're more likely to get 0 wins than you are 4. That's bad. Frostlord on Stonehorn with Ethereal is good. A legitimately good unit. Yetis are your best unit, and they're nothing special actually in the game. All your battalions blow, pretty much. Bragus Beasthammer is okay if you only play against weak opponents who make mistakes all the time, and you get lucky. What do I hope for in GHB? Honestly, I don't care about the GHB that much. Nothing could change, and I wouldn't even be upset, because I'm just waiting for a book. You would almost have to come out with a battle tome to save it. The points changes would have to be so drastic to make them playable that it's not even worth thinking about. Mournfang would have to be 120 before they're even, like, considered playable, in my opinion. Thundertusks would have to just get rules changes or be so cheap that it's, like, stupid. Like, Thundertusks would have to cost Warp Lightning Cannon points, like 180. And that's just stupid. They would never do that. But until their damage doesn't chart, like, you just can't take them. And unless you're running more than one Huskard version, they're not going to heal themselves with any regularity. And so the odd D3 mortal wounds here and there, like, really do just hamper them. They're not worth it. I took 2 to try to shoot people with Always Strikes First ability, and you shoot somebody with Always Strikes First ability and it doesn't kill them, and then they enter combat and you're dead. So, and your guy costs almost as much as their guy, and you didn't do anything really. So yeah, it's not okay. The only thing you got is a Frostlord on Stonehorn with Ethereal. Everything else is either not that great, like Yetis, or really bad. They need a rewrite. They need actual Allegiance abilities. A lot of their War Scrolls need to just be heavily changed. I'm thinking about Thundertusks and their charts. Thinking about Icebrow Hunter so that he does anything. Thinking about most of your battalions. Mournfang. And War Scroll changes are Battle Tome things. And oftentimes, they're not even Battle Tome things. Almost all of Sylvaneth didn't change much at all with War Scrolls. And the ones that really needed War Scroll changes had almost nothing changed. So I'm concerned. And I've put them in D as a technicality because they beat the other F armies and some of the other D armies sometimes. But if you're going on pure statistics, they're actually an F because their win percentage is lower than everybody else's except for STD, and it's tied with somebody else at 30.
Wanderers,
so
perhaps.
I'm putting them in D because
they can steal. They can steal like 2
because
wins.
I've stolen wins with them sometimes against other terrible armies. But if I'm going to be purely like pure data, you know, they're hard F right above STD because nobody has a worse win record than them besides STD.
Sure, but I think they actually do pub stomp a little bit at that like intro level of the game.
They have 2 battle plans that they're not shit at, and that's something you can't really say about the other F armies, at least.
Oh, and every now and then you watch someone with their pants completely down, underestimating a...
Yeah, sometimes you get Duality of Death, and you can actually play like a normal army a little bit, and beat KO or whatever. Like, that's possible.
And sometimes you actually do just, like, run hot and then throw a Stonehorn into some shit.
Yeah, and one of the many
up.
complaints is that you don't have a lot of attacks, and they all hit on 4s, which means they're inconsistent. But that also means that you have the chance to get really lucky and do okay damage. I'm not going to say tons of damage, because tons of damage is killing 60 grots. You know, Stonehorns can do like, if I roll in the upper 1 percentile, I can do like 20 or something.
I know what I'd change. Don't call them punches and kicks anymore.
I actually want to lean into it now. I've embraced the meme.
Have you?
They should be punches and kicks, and they should all be 2 damage. To be like, this is how hard we punch and how huge we are. One of your command traits is you double the number of punches and kicks your army has.
There you go.
And so your dudes are like punching 6 times, or 12 times for the Beast Riders.
Yeah, so called like punch kata.
Yeah, because like punches and kicks are super lame if they suck, but punches and kicks that do 2 damage a pop, that's awesome. So then we have Comatose. This is a combination of the lowest win percentages in the whole game, and nobody plays them. They're waiting on a book real bad. So it's the worst of everything.
See, I think Wanderers could be its own book. I really do. I think there's enough there.
Just give it a centerpiece, like create a new model called Forest Dragon that has a proper sculpt nowadays, and Wanderers is a fine army. You know,
make it shit more consistent.
Yeah, it seems like Wanderers have the potential to not be the worst, but the stats were just real clear on this one.
What they're fundamentally
real good players have tried to play this army and just haven't put up any numbers that are good at any time. And this was like before the better armies came out. Yes, they have some ranged, so why didn't they increase like free people in KO, you might ask? It's a once per game neg 3 rend, and most stuff is ethereal that you really want to shoot. And if you thought KO were fragile, well, welcome to Wanderers. I mean, I suppose you have Eternal Guard, but
I went around the Eternal Guard.
And their battle traits are horrible. Like that board edge stuff where it's only 1 unit and it's the same board edge. Yeah, I know you can do the diagonal deployment thing, but like it's so fiddly. It has so many restrictions on it. It's not good.
Like points wise, they could stand to have another like full unit of Glade Guard.
Yeah. And a lot of their ancillary stuff is just way expensive. Sisters of the Thorn, the ones with the reroll saves Mortal Wounds spell.
Yeah.
Like, they're way expensive at 220 or whatever they're at. They're like 40 points overcosted, and their spell is suited way better to mixed order than any unit they can target in their own army. Why do you want to reroll failed saves in an army with 5-up saves? It doesn't have a good target in your own army, unless you had the centerpiece, and then there you go. But they're still too expensive. That's why you don't even take them in mixed order. What do I hope with GHB? Sisters of the Thorn go down 40 or 60, which doesn't even help you. It'll just help mixed order, so I don't know. Maybe not. Sisters of the Watch are too expensive.
They need a rework on their allegiance abilities.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with Wanderers, anything you do to Wanderers to make one of their units good enough is just going to help mixed order, and you're still going to suck. That's the problem.
They need an overhaul on their allegiance abilities.
Right, because allegiance abilities are why you would ever play an army instead of just that unit in some other army, and they don't have that. So
I would love for Bodkins to, like, it's fine that it's a once per game. I would like for them to have a mini Bodkins, and I would love for them to have a selectable, like, Bodkins, because it's like, think of it like you've got the special quiver, trick arrows in your quiver, and so, like, you are Hawkeye, and, like, now you have the Mortal Wounds arrow, and now you have the Ren 3 arrow, or now you have the rerolls to hit arrow. I would love something like that, where they've got, like, the fucking tech arrowheads, and they can swap between them once per game. Fine. Like, maybe when, like, Allegiance, when you are Wanderers, all your shooting has, you know, an additional Ren -1, blah blah blah. But once per game you can switch it to this, but then now it's stuck at that. You know, something like that. It gets a boost for that turn.
I don't know why Elven archers are hitting on 4s.
They should be 3s and 3s base.
I think it should be like Peerless archers. They're elven. They're like wood elf archers. They should hit on 2s and wound on 4s instead of 3s and 3s, because they always hit. It's just not always wound.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
And so it's additive, like add op prop, right? It's the same as 3s and 3s, 2s and 4s. So it's not the same technically, but they should hit on 2s, wound on 4s, and have 1 rend. Dispossessed, they will get a book.
Yeah,
I think
they deserve one.
And they have a proper Dispossessed section in the web store, so clearly they will get a book.
Also,
everything they have is just straight like 20% too expensive. Every single thing, except like warriors are well costed, and everything else is too expensive.
Right.
Rune Lord, I guess, is fine, but Warden King should go down, even though he's 120. He should be 100. Hammers should go down 20. Same with the shield ones. Like, those should be 120, 100. So, Iron Drakes are 180. They should be 160 with a massive reg discount.
So, hot take mode. So Fireslayer's got, like, pretty elite. I want to see KO go elite shoot. I want to see Dispossessed become, like, Horde Dwarf.
Horde Orf?
Yeah.
Yikes. They're on 25 mils, which means that's possible.
Yeah.
No one should be Horde on 32s. That's cruel.
No, it's brutal.
They need big iron golems.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, they need giant iron golems that are like steam-powered, like punchos, with like an anvil for a hand. They need stuff like that. And they need to find some way to make them fast. You can't just be the slow army and that's your shtick. Lots of people are slow, but they have ways to get around it, and so it's not so bad. Like, Fyreslayers are real slow, but they have deep strikes. Nurgle is slow technically on its war scroll, but actually on the turn that they want, they get like +7 to movement and run and charge and stuff. And Stormcast are slow, but they have deep strikes and teleports, although some of them are only once per game. The Book of Grudges should be a real cool mechanic, and they have a good idea, but it needs to go back to the drawing board.
It needs to be a good mechanic. It's a good idea. It needs to be.
Yeah, they basically just need a book. Or, I mean, Dispossessed could work with a completely new, revised GHB set of battle traits and a bunch of points decreases, but probably not one or the other.
I think, yeah, you could make them work, but I feel like they deserve a book. I think just dwarves, in the same sense that I'm still looking around like where are my just elves at? They deserve their books, you know.
And some like giant iron golems and some random new stuff like that. And rules to play Gotrek and him too. Fireslayers should have been the move 8 dwarves who are fucking running all the time with run and charge on everything.
And they're just
because they're berserkers. They don't even wear pants to be better sprinters. Dispossessed should have been the move 4 with deep strikes. Fireslayers should have been the run and charge move 6. That's my hot take. Regardless, they need help, please. And STD, the only army with a statistically worse win rate than Beastclaw Raiders, who are at 30, is STD with 25%. 1 in 5 games they win in tournaments, and almost no one plays them, and it's really quite depressing. The rules are fucking terrible, and all of their models are way better in every other army that they can be in. And I mean way better. If you're playing them, like, why not mark them as God marked and just be Nurgle? And this is sort of why their win rate is 25%, because nobody would actually play STD. You use most of those models, and you could just be a God army, and then be a mediocre God army instead. They could be cool. Barbarians who worship all chaos and say, truly Conan the Barbarian. Like, they're barbarians with runic shields, and they're like, Khorne, give me your blessing, and then they wait a moment. Doesn't say anything. All right, fuck off. Tzeentch, give me your blessing. There you go. And all the Warcry releases could be really cool. It'd be neat if all of those were like your troops and stuff. Definitely going to get wrapped up with Everchosen and make Archaon not a complete joke. Honestly, I think they're waiting for Nagash's campaign arc to end.
Sure.
Because if they're going to release Everchosen and STD, it's going to be with a brand new Archaon, and it's going to be with him being the start of the next campaign. Well, we did it. We made it through. I hope you enjoyed the super long show. Consider it sort of a snapshot of the metagame before GHB19. And somewhat of a compare and contrast point when we move on from here and the General's Handbook comes out in a few weeks. Possibly 2. Should be interesting. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Bjarni, Carl Martin Rosenberg, Doom and Darkness, Edward Lawrence, Greg Dykus, Jacob Graham, Jens Nielsen, Kyle Zmerchik, sorry I probably pronounced that wrong, Michael Derazinski, Miguel Cabezas, Perna, look forward to WoW Classic my dude, Richard Rossman, Warbound, and Windigo, also look forward to WoW Classic. TY, friends. Thanks for watching.